that we just wouldn't be able to get it on here, so.
We're just doing that just because it is time. I'm assuming you guys want to wait a little bit for the chair.
Has anybody heard from her?
Oh, are you recording?
Yes.
Posterity.
That's incredible.
Overwhelming support for the housing element assets.
There's some really interesting.
I didn't even think
Yeah, it seems the response is the one thing that scared everybody is the one about substandard housing stock.
Yeah. But even then, there was still.
Zero what?
Pretty good.
Oh, good. That's not to actually recall, but that's to have a recall election. So that's
Put
to
it on
put
the
it to the
ballot.
vote, yeah.
Hi, Suzanne. Hello. Happy New Year and all that. Yep. Okay, so it looks like everybody's here. So can we take roll call?
Chair Watson,
Present.
Vice Chair Howe,
Present.
Commissioner Smith,
Here.
Commissioner Hunter.
Here.
You have it for.
Okay, next we have approval of agenda.
Move to approve the agenda.
Second. I just have a question. We have looks like we have the questionnaire, was the questionnaire that went to that we were gonna have the citizens answering.
It is.
And is that on the agenda?
No,
It's not.
and that was purposely not,
Okay,
because it wasn't going to be done in time to get in the agenda
okay, so
packet.
it's just to look at.
Yeah, it was a courtesy by Stefan.
Yep, so there were two paper copies. There was one that's historically requested, another that was requested, so I printed them off. The rest of you have it digitally in your boxes.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, so. Yeah, so we had a motion to approve the agenda in a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Approval of minutes.
The motion to approve the minutes.
All second. I didn't see them in the packet. Where are they? When I looked at the packet today at the library.
Page 3 to 5, I believe,
I didn't see the minutes.
4 and 5.
No, that's this right here. Oh, no, it's. Yeah, 4 and 5. So they kind of look like action minutes. Okay, do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
I made a
You want me to
motion.
do it? Do you second? You second it? Yeah, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so actions and presentations, we have consideration of future land use map and content. So this was a portion of the comprehensive plan that was added, I think, this summer by the contractor. And we haven't really looked at it very much. I think it was presented in a workshop at the Blue Sage. She had the future land use map maybe on a, on a, on a screen. But other than that, I had some questions about it, and I don't know if anybody else did, so I wanted to reserve the opportunity to go over it at this meeting. So do you have big pictures of it? I think, I don't know which one this is, which iteration this is. I know there's a little itty bitty one that's floating around.
It's in the packet on
It's in the
page
packet.
34.
Yeah, 34.
Maybe it could be projected.
I have a printout of what was in the packet, but it's pretty pixelated.
Did you print that out yourself? I have a
Yeah.
little printout here. I did.
But it's just from the packet.
Mine is pixelated and a lot smaller. Wow, that looks kind of like a different one, Lucy. Is it just the colors on your,
This is what was in the packet.
really? I didn't see it. This was on page, oh, wait, no, you're correct. I was looking at the planning areas A and B. Okay, so I did have questions about how this kind of dovetails with planning areas A and B, and this is kind of something that's more of a historic document. And that was on page 34. And this, the land use map.
Oh, I'm sorry, the land use is page 30.
Yeah, and then this was what, 20 something?
Yeah. This was there, 28.
28. Okay, so this is the planning area A and B that, and I'm not sure what area A included in area B. I didn't have time to print all that off. Let's see what's on the packet here. I don't know if we've ever referenced that document that goes with it, but it had to do with the, like the growing at the agreement with the county as we kind of grew out toward the highway.
33 corridor.
Yeah, 33 corridor. And the, so we have the growth management area on page 27. On page 28, we have this, on page 19, page 19. Yeah, is the planning areas A and B on page 19, it looks like. No, 28, I'm sorry. I'm looking at the comprehensive plan, that's page 19, packet is page 28. And they're just in here. And I'm not quite sure what the relevance of that is in when we compare it to the land use, the future land use areas and now. So that's kind of I don't know what the relevance is.
It's a document that's been accepted and is still in use and hasn't been superseded. So that's.
Yes, but I think there's a written component to it.
There's a whole document.
Yeah, exactly. And
And
we're
the
looking at
report-
that.
I think the report is referenced in the resource documents.
Yeah, but have we read the report?
I have.
I mean, I've read the old one.
That's all there is. That's
Okay.
it. This is it. This is that report.
The LU. It was a resolution that I've read.
I read a whole report that map came from.
Do we have that here in the pack?
No,
Okay, so has
it's
the
one of
planning
those
commission,
documents that's referenced.
so has the planning commission had the opportunity to look at that report? And
I
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
I read it earlier.
Recently.
yeah, it would be good to like have a copy of that, to be able to refer to. I don't know if that's something the staff can, send to all of us. Samira, do you have access to that? What's the name of it?
Can I offer? So it's easily pulled up on the town of Paonia's website under government, town plans and maps. And it's the Highway 133 corridor plan. It is accessible online.
Okay, so we're looking for the Highway 133 corridor. Is it?
It's a 37-page document that explains the collaboration between what they call the Highway 133 Advisory Committee, Paonia Board of Trustees, and the Town Planning Commission. 2010.
Okay, so you Google that?
Would it be a good idea to put a link to that in this, on one of these maps, just on the bottom, so if people did have that question? You can refer to it easily, they could find where, where the document that came up with this is.
I think in the final version, where you have your resource documents, each one of those resource documents would be a clickable link that somebody could click on. I think there's quite a few of them. It's easy to do a link.
Would that then be in the appendix, or where would that link?
Is that page 90 something page?
It's on appendix E, reference and resource documents,
Yeah.
on page
101.
101 right now.
So it's 101 and 102 of your agenda packets.
Okay, I guess my point is, it's kind of pointless having this map in here if we don't understand what area A, area B means. I mean, it's like, so it would be nice to have like a clickable link right here on this page with this map, so people can easily, they don't have to go rooting through appendices. And it's kind of hard to, especially if you have a lot of appendices, it's kind of hard to like match them to where they came from. And there's no reference on this page what appendix item you'd be trying to find.
I'm gonna try to print this for you. There's nothing that defines area A and B other than what's on the map. The document that we're talking about talks about the process and then gives policies for that corridor that was agreed upon between the town of Paonia in 2010 and the county commissioners. I'm printing it for you right now.
Okay, thanks. So my question then, if there's nothing that describes area A and area B, why is this in here?
It's delineated on the map, so it is described, it's just on that map. I'm not the one that did it, it was done in 2010.
I thought it was maybe in that resolution, the old resolution from the planning area. There's a resolution,
You know what year it was done?
it's probably around that same time. Yeah, so I guess it would be under, but I don't think the resolutions in our code go back that far.
I'm looking right now.
I assume it had to do with the pace of development or something.
Future. Just, could just, put some-
To any relevant documents.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I had a paper printed copy off it, so I don't know what file it's in. It was called it was an MOU. Maybe it was a resolution. It was an MOU between the county and the town.
That's something else. There's that for the IGA.
Urban planning.
IGA, that's what it was.
That- There's that for the 3-mile boundary with Delta County.
No, it had to do with going out to the highway.
No. That IGA is not, but the highways is required.
It talked about having to get building permits, that kind of.
I don't think that's
No,
the
that's not
133
in there.
corridor.
I don't think, yeah, okay, maybe it wasn't the IGA, maybe, Mary, but there was something that referenced all that. It talked about getting building permits out in that area.
It does, from the county,
Okay,
and there's policies in there that say these are the things that they're going to do when getting a building permit.
okay,
So that's in this Highway 133, okay,
and
because
so,
it's also in the IGA, the
Okay.
3-mile boundary.
okay, so I see
That
this,
we need to redo,
Yeah.
we never got it approved,
this does have,
right, okay.
this does have reference to area A in this that I'm seeing here. And, for instance, I'll share it with you and Lucy. Unless you brought it up on your screen.
No, I don't.
Okay, so under goals and policies, it has area A, it talks about open space and landscaping shall be used to buffer new businesses. It talks about
The land use for that area.
kind of like, landscaping.
It also talks about driveway accesses,
Okay,
and those are things like if somebody wants to develop out there, what would be required of the county? That both the town and the county is agreed to.
okay, and was this updated at any point in time, or is this 2010?
It's 2010.
Interesting, you'd be interested in that. Talks about dark skies. So I don't know, talks about driveway access in area A. Shall conform to applicable CDOT and Delta County Town of Paonia roadway access design standards. I'm just really skimming this. Landscaping, breaking up massing. I think they were afraid of like a lot of like that kind of sprawl development that's not, that needs to be camouflaged. Is what I think. I don't see any references to area B yet. Okay, so it was, resolution 2010-10 is the resolution. Oh wait, that was a number of sewer taps that will be made available in area A. I don't know what that was. Okay. Talks about discounting water taps, out of town rates. So what relevance does this have right now on this whole? I'm just, I'm kind of a little off topic, but I'm kind of wondering how this, this is part of the comprehensive plan, basically, correct, Stefan?
If it's not a question for me, I think I.
Okay,
I think on page, what is it? 8 of this, the Town of Paonia Highway 130 Master Plan Vision. It references the town's comprehensive plan.
any of that, we can. Okay,
I'm just thinking that the vision for this probably is pretty relevant.
so they didn't want to compete with the downtown. They didn't want to see the highway usurping the downtown businesses. They didn't want it to kind of funnel off business from the downtown commercial core. So I was looking at right there. Unnecessary competition with downtown, limit non-motorized access. Require greater travel distances for public works and public safety.
That sounds to be compatible with the 1996 comprehensive plan.
Okay, but we're including this in our new plan then too. Correct?
The map with A and B.
Yeah, but it seems to me if we have nothing to reference A and B,
Oh,
and you say there is a link to this, Stefan,
There is on the website, town's website.
on the website.
it does talk about area A right here. Right here, area A is defined in the Highway 133 overlay. So they talk, I guess the areas have to also deal with the utilities that could be provided out there and the prices of the taps, it looks like. So it was a lot of information that was kind of contemplated back then. And I think property owners out there were involved. I wasn't involved in it at all, so I don't have any intimate knowledge about that. So new commercial development in area A should complement existing businesses and not be detrimental to long-term community economic sustainability. So I guess I'm a little bit confused where we put this in here, so I'm assuming it has something to do with the current comprehensive plan.
It's really good.
Yeah.
I'm reading this.
Yeah,
And it's really good because we can't control what's out there because it's not in town limits, but it was agreed upon goals for how they should build, and I'm reading it through again. It's really good.
it was done by a professional organization.
Yeah, so I think
It's-
I think as a reference in the comprehensive plan, it's a good thing to have in here.
Yeah,
Just to remind everybody that this was created, has not been revised. Nobody's come in and asked for a new one. And it looks quite contemporary,
Yeah.
actually.
yes.
Don't you think that under this map, which kind of is like, what is this about? There should be a link.
Oh,
to
yeah,
this.
yeah, that's, to
So
me,
we can
that's,
do that.
that's a,
Okay.
I think that's an easy to do
Yeah,
thing.
that's all I think we
Right.
should do, because
But it's really good.
Well, so if it's a valuable document, then we need to make sure it's very accessible.
yeah, and so
Yeah.
right down here, we
Yes.
put a link
Exactly.
right under this.
Okay. Okay. Great.
I don't know what that means for the water tap moratorium with 8 water taps being available.
Well, they talk about sewer taps too, and they're talking about the cost of the taps. I thought that was interesting. I haven't had a chance, obviously,
Maybe,
to read this in depth.
and it might be with the link, just put this document was developed in 2010 or something like that, so people know it's not contemporary.
Pre-moratorium, you
Yeah,
mean?
but because of some of the things that don't apply.
I mean, because this is an agreement between us and the county and those property owners, so.
And it's still in effect.
But we would certainly need the legal counsel's opinion on it, so.
But it just gives some context to this map, which I think we need.
Okay, so, that being said, I guess I'm kind of wondering, I'm looking at the future land use map here. And, we have some uses that have been identified in this area. And I'm wondering how that dovetails with, comports with this Highway 133 master plan. So I was looking at this, trying to figure out where some of these areas were. So for instance, the mixed use, which is pink out by Samuel Wade Road. Is this around the Farnsworth gravel pit or the storage units, or are we identifying orchard property
I
here?
think that's the old map. Is
This
that the
one
map?
It's
Yeah. I think that was the very first map
We got
that was
those.
presented.
So it's this one?
Yeah, it's that one.
Oh, okay, okay.
That was presented, I believe that's the one that was used when everybody met at the Blue Sage.
But it looks very similar. Look at that.
Well, yes and
It's
no.
almost exactly the same out by Samuel Wade Road.
Well, I think again, I think it's the details.
Are better than the
Yeah.
teensy weensy one we're
Yeah.
looking at now.
Yeah, and that's the one that's on page 34.
Yeah,
And-
I
and
tried to print it
I
out
think,
and I wasn't very successful.
What's out there? Doesn't necessarily comport with the A and B in the 133 planning area, but I'd have to look at the purple, what purple means.
purple
In
is
the
mixed
text.
use.
Yeah,
And for planning area, that's area A. And
So,
they don't match. The
Yeah.
purple on the
green.
A and B map does not match the purple on the land use map. So I don't know if there's a reason. And what is the green?
urban farm,
Urban farm, and there's some mixed use shown on map A and B that is not shown here.
Yeah, I think the map on page 34 goes more in depth than the one on page 28. The old one.
The master plan, the map before.
Yeah, the corridor map.
It's just kind of hard to see where these boundaries are. Like, I mean, I'm looking at this going, is it the Redwood Arms Motel?
Well, to be
Oh,
clear,
this is stall, okay, look at that one.
to be
Which is
clear, a
the
future
worst.
land use map is not all the way down to property lines.
Well,
It
it's
shows
not even-
designations
okay.
for future land use.
So it's not even down to roads.
No, it's correct, it's not zoning. Zoning goes down to property.
Well, it's not even property lines. I can't even understand where the roads are in this area, like where actually is Stall Road. I see, I think I see Price Road. I see the entrance into town, but I'm not seeing Stall Road. I'm just kind of curious. I mean, is it kind of meant to fit with the type of development we already have out there with Redwood Arms and that little strip mall thing going on out there? Does it have to do with Farnsworth and their trailer park they're making there, or their gravel pit, or their rental business? I'm just kind of curious, is this kind of using what's already there and helping identify it a little bit on this map? Or are we creating new areas for those types of businesses?
We're not creating, so this is not, I just want to make sure that there's not confusion, that this is not zoning.
No,
Right, this
but
is future land use designations. I
exactly,
want to draw attention to the March 3rd, 2024 meeting with the agenda packet where it says key considerations. So this is what was considered by Phoenix Rising Resources when making this future land use map. Preserving Paonia's small town feel and rural and historical character, maintaining the town's agricultural legacy and its connection to agricultural and public lands, the increasing demand for affordable housing, identifying options for a gradual density increase, maintaining the economic vitality of the historic downtown, maintaining the commercial development along Grand Avenue, and clustering new commercial development along the town's gateways, which on this future land use map are delineated by stars. Identifying areas for creative mixed use and business opportunities. So that's where you have that purple. That's why they did that. Preserving and increasing access to open space and the river, protecting wildlife habitat and riparian corridors, and identifying natural hazards and their implications on existing and future development.
okay. So my question is, I look at this future land use map and I'm trying to figure out where's Paonia gonna grow. We keep talking about how we need to add housing because we have such a housing shortage. And my question is, how are we gonna grow? And I'm not really seeing it represented in this at all. Like, what are we gonna, what would annexation look like? What direction would it go in? I mean, we have on this land use map, going down Grand Avenue to the highway, the whole high school is considered agriculture zone.
On which map?
On this one right here.
No, the high school is, it's,
High school
because
is
we don't
all,
own the high school.
no,
And
it's in the green area. The high school is green, and that's all agriculture there.
So it's called urban farm, right?
Yeah, that's,
And what is that definition though in our packets? They give a definition for urban farm, right?
yep, hang on. Urban farm, we get to that in the
Page 24, 25, 32, and 93. Mentions urban farms.
This area is defined by agriculture. This is on page 32 of the packet.
Thanks.
you said 32.
32. This area is defined by agricultural land that supports the practice of cultivating crops. We have a lot of county crops. Cultivating crops, raising livestock, and agritourism. It creates a transition between town living and the surrounding rural farmland and contributes to conserving open space and agricultural land. This category plays a critical role in preserving Paonia's rural history and character and in reinforcing its local culinary farm-to-table tradition. Development of this area is minimal, but could include clustered and single-family housing to support agricultural uses and land conservation. Primary uses, agricultural, supporting uses, residential uses that support agriculture, including worker housing and small-scale retail, open space conservation, and institutional.
And the institutional is what gets the high school.
Correct.
Well, everything is institutional. Every single land use area in this thing has institutional as part of it, and that's kind of curious to me too. It's pretty
It
open-ended.
also encompasses our trail network that's out there along the river park, and any future trails that are out there.
Yeah, that was, public, what was that called? That's not really institutional so much as recreational. Parks and trails. No, that's,
No, it would be residential, where the trailer park is.
No, we're talking trails, as in.
Oh, trails.
Yeah. Trail systems that are owned by the town.
so why don't we have parks and trails as part of the urban farmland too?
Open space conservation, institutional, you could add that as a supporting use, that would be pretty good.
Do you want to contemplate adding parks and trails to the urban farmland?
Page 32.
I mean, I don't know if it
Yeah.
really matters, that this is just kind of a visioning thing, and, you know, it's not, I don't know how down to the nuts and bolts it has to be, but we could certainly add that. Consider adding that. Okay, so I just am wondering if there's kind of an inherent conflict sometimes between agriculture and like even the high school there. But I mean, nobody does crop dusting anymore, but that's an example. Or if there's like you know, I don't know, some kind of a animal like
My daughter goes to North Fork, that, and that seems to be in an agricultural area surrounded by cattle lands, so,
Oh, the high school.
yeah.
yeah,
I mean, it seems to be a pretty normal thing on the
down
western
in
slope.
Hotchkiss, you mean?
Correct.
Okay,
It seems to be normal on the western slope to have it run back like.
yeah, this used to be the high school before. Okay,
Do we want to maybe
yeah, do
add
we,
parks and trails to that?
yeah, should we make a
statement?
motion to do that?
Well, one
Okay.
second, and you're talking about the urban farmland. I just
Yeah,
want to look at it
just
one more
add parks
time.
and trails. Clean that up a little bit.
It's kind of, if you look at the conservation neighborhoods is a little weird too, but that's where I was kind of looking up there. They have parks and trails there.
The river corridors.
I mean, look at the supporting use above here. I mean, okay, so conservation neighborhoods. I mean, if urban farmland, that's a big river corridor, right? Along by the high school and all that.
So I believe that was pulled from FEMA maps when our consultant was making that. They included the floodway, so.
So, natural resource preservation, is that appropriate to put in there too? I mean, so,
Well, it's not, it's already in there, right, riparian way, said something about riparian way,
Which one are you looking at now?
urban farmland.
Still
open,
farmland.
no, it says open space conservation.
Same right, Pyrenees.
It says open space conservation, not, so we have all these different kind of things, but do they all mean the same thing? Like natural resource preservation and open space conservation. Are those kind of, do they mean the same thing? Or do they have two different meanings?
Is the difference with a conservation neighborhood that you can get an easement? With natural resource preservation refer to the actual vehicle of an easement, a conservation easement?
I don't think
And that's
so.
why that would be there.
When I looked up conservation neighborhoods quite a while ago, I was trying to figure out what they were. And you'd see them in Vermont and stuff, and it's not like what's being presented here at all. It was more like grouping homes to keep things from like that 5-acre farmland sprawl going on. But it really it was a county designation. It wasn't really a small town thing, because if we start turning everything around us into conservation easements, we're not going to be able to grow at all. And the only way you could grow is density, and I don't think that's the right way to grow, to put it all in one basket like that.
I think right now that conservation neighborhood is the only one, Creek Vista. Is that
No.
right?
That's what it looks, that's why I have it
Yeah, it's the
somewhere else.
only one above a creek.
Yeah,
And that used to
And
be
you,
R
and there
two.
now, it's like a huge amount of acreage you need to have to make conservation now, since they made these.
Is there a conservation easement already in there
Yeah.
around Creek Vista
There
where
is,
you live?
but up above, in
Uh-huh.
Hoxhaven.
And they did
Yeah,
go.
but see, they're out of town.
And
No,
then-
it's in town. There's a conservation easement. in
Oh, well,
town
the old,
lots.
there's only one property above us that
Yeah.
is partial conservation easement. That's Gillette's property.
Mhm.
And then Hoxhaven has it, but they're out of
Right.
town. But in order to be a conservation easement, there's no land.
You don't
in
have to have enough
town.
land available to do it anymore, is what you're
Yeah,
saying,
they
within
won't do
town.
it anymore for small lands.
Yeah,
So the only place they could do it is out in that agricultural zone.
so we do have another conservation easement. It's not in town, but it's right on our boundaries, and it's right here, the Bergs Harvest. The orchards out there are all in a conservation easement.
In county?
Yeah, but it's like right on the other side of Niagara. It's right at a balanced town.
Oh, right, what they see when you go to make the T intersection.
Yeah, so I guess what I'm looking at the physical barriers that we have in the town. Like, I know the town annexed up onto the top of Lamborn Mesa there, but we've got this like steep hillside there that kind of keeps us in a way from growing efficiently in that direction. I mean, because I'm thinking when you grow, I mean, I think we try to follow our, the easy, utilities access, so it makes sense. So it's not,
I think that area that you're talking about, and it's up above, it's the end of Doris, and then it goes up all behind you. And now it's too steep to develop. It's considered too steep.
yeah, but up on the top of Lamborn Mesa, it's in
Exactly.
town as well.
I don't think there's
No,
much of
that's
it.
not it.
Yeah.
Some of it's in
No,
town,
it's in
the
town.
clocks and the,
Laddie
Liz
Livingston's
Livingston's,
place,
yeah,
and so
those
all
two
on the
pieces.
edge there.
but it's only
That's on
two
town.
pieces in town.
Exactly. But I mean, it's on top of and the water's been extended up there and everything. I mean,
And
of course, they had water anyway. But I mean, so my question is, we have these barriers to keep us from expanding, in size and growth. We've got conservation easement there, we've got conservation easement there, we've got natural, like, the steep slopes there. We've got
That's
the river over here, and then the highway, and then it goes into slopes again, and then I mean,
And that really
wondering.
dovetails with what, everybody that came to the master plan, they didn't want to see growth out like that. So that's where ADUs and the whole housing planning comes in.
I don't
the
think,
infill.
Yeah,
think
infill.
people wanting to create density, so we live in New York and everybody else gets to live in the county. I thought it was part of the plan, for growth. It wasn't the only way we were supposed to grow. ADUs weren't the answer to everything, and they certainly aren't the answer to the future, because, they're not gonna be big enough. It's not a way to grow, really.
Infill was definitely an emphasis.
Yes, but that was
To
the only,
create more
it's because
housing.
that's the only way the only choices people were
Yeah.
given at the time, and people were thinking of their needs right now. I want to have an ADU, so I can rent it out. It was a stopgap measure. If you remember, Shea Coburn was saying you can do this in the next 2 to 5 years.
Mhm.
But the thing, it's not long-term. It's not the next 20 years. It's not the next 30
But
years.
the only thing we can do beyond that is annex, for the town to have any say.
Exactly.
And the annexation is being considered throughout the comp plan.
Yeah, but the annexation is difficult, is what I'm saying.
It
because
is,
We have
yeah.
these boundaries that are locking us in. We've got these conservation easements that have
Mhm.
locked us in. We've got the steep slopes, and now we're saying that this has got to be agriculture here. When we look out into the county, that all has to be agriculture. So I'm kind of curious, and then we're not going to grow up by Jumbo Mountain. I mean, that's
You can only go
geographically
Minnesota
impossible.
Creek
But
and towards 133, right?
Yeah, so this March 3rd meeting that they had, we had at Osage, there was a lot of comments that were received. This is well documented in all of the packets that Phoenix Rising has given to us. But this green urban farm, there was this push from a lot of people, including folks on Price Road, that said, we like the rural gateway that we have to our town. And that's why they did something like this that we're looking at with urban farmland. What we could tweak is this definition of urban farmland. You could tweak it to add, like you were saying, recreation and trails, but you could also add it to say, well, add more for housing. You know, are these what we would consider, we're not supposed to say the dirty word zoning in our future land use map, but are these things that could be later zoned estate residential, where you've got acre-sized lots, you know, something like that? Is that how you would want to redefine it? But you can do that redefining it now.
Yeah,
Just keep in mind that a lot of the comments were, we want to keep our rural character with our gateways.
yeah.
Our gateways are like Stall Road and Grand Avenue at the highway. So
Yeah,
And growth can always be about Matthews Lane.
so
Within that map, we have the Hops Farm, which is now estate residential, and then we have the.
it's not,
river-
It's R2.
It's R2.
It's R2.
R, yeah. Oh, it went R2.
And
Right.
no, it's always been R2.
for the PUD, it was always RT.
It was gonna be a
And then,
development.
and then the,
But that would
Frederick's land, I don't know what he calls it, that river property that's right below, that's gonna be housing eventually.
eventually,
In
yeah.
the wildlife corridor.
But see, that's where it's like, you want growth, but you want wildlife, so
Well, the
How-
wildlife is better down by the river than up by the highway. So what we're doing is we're allowing low-density housing by the highway, and we're putting the higher growth down in the wildlife area. And it's like, it's kind of flip-flop.
but in that big green zone, you're always gonna have that problem.
Yeah,
You know, so the way to kind of get around it might be, as Stefan recommended, just put in and low-density housing. or
Putting the
something,
uses in
some
there.
other
yeah.
use within there so that it leaves it open.
So,
Residential is currently included as a supporting use.
yeah.
Yes, exactly.
So I don't like to be the devil's advocate here, but so when we talk about conservation neighborhoods, this is exactly what I see conservation neighborhoods as trying to prevent, and that is the hobby farms, the acreage that's getting split up into these large acres. So when you look at Maine and their definition of conservation neighborhoods, they try to cluster the houses closer together and then have the open spaces around it. And that's not something you can do in a town because we don't have enough land to do that. But I haven't seen in all my looking anything that's called a conservation neighborhood that reflects what we're using to describe what we're trying to do. So it doesn't look like it has a definition that's kind of widely accepted as one definition. It's kind of used in different ways, I think.
So this conservation neighborhood looks like it's near the Jumbo Mountain Trail then, correct? So I'm wondering if that was the reasoning behind Phoenix Rising doing this definition, but what I'm hearing is you guys have two definitions in this future land use map that you really want to look at, and that's conservation neighborhoods and their primary and supporting uses, and urban farmland and its primary and supporting uses. So you've got two definitions that you really want to tweak, and one of them takes up the majority of outside, future land use or future growth. So that might be a good place to start, looking at the definitions and go from there.
Yeah, and then I know we're not the ones that are supposed to be doing that in this, but in this corridor plan, a lot of the way they would mitigate this thing is to make sure there's appropriate landscaping. You can do buildings that aren't built in a way that are that upstage, for instance, the view sheds.
And that's all in this.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is referred, if we put a link to that, then it refers back to that
Yes.
document, which is.
So you
2000.
kind of mitigate the impacts of adding development in that area with the landscaping and.
And the housing element gets to all that too. It all talks about not being too close to each other, you know, dealing with solar access and things like that and view shed, that's already in the housing law.
Yeah, I always thought that kind of had to do more with the heavy, closer.
Could be
neighborhoods
anywhere.
downtown.
Anywhere it needs to be
But I
considered.
mean, I think it would be good to emphasize it if people think it's important, in these out of town areas. You know, and that's what's, because it was kind of agreed upon in this master plan.
Keep in mind that whatever your comprehensive plan says for future land use can inform an amendment to this Highway 133 corridor plan, which is probably time is 14 years old, 15 years old.
We need a comp plan in order to do that.
Right, and so we would do a comp plan that says, this is really what we'd rather see out there, and then amend this agreement between the town and the county. And probably do that at about the same time we do our IGA with the county as well. I do want to say that the county did approach me about selling sewer taps for properties along 133. And I told them, sure, we'll do it, but they have to annex into town. And that stopped it dead in the water. So now they're still going to fix their septics instead of going into tying into our sewer system.
You know,
Just
Big
FYI.
B's came to the board, it was in 2017. And they said their septic tank was failing. And they got permission, they had the state say, we absolutely need to hook up to the town sewer system. And they had to put a pumping station in because they were so low. But they got a sewer tap because of that. And if anybody else had an emergency like that, I'd imagine we'd be forced to letting them on the system,
A little
correct?
bit different.
Yeah.
So Big B's is literally next to our water treatment plant,
Yeah.
whereas these properties would have to tie into the main sewer line, all gravity fed from town and Hidden Valley to go, I mean, it's this thing that services both areas all the way down to the plant. This doesn't tie into the main that goes into the plant, that Big B's, it goes right into the plant.
Yeah, they
So
had
a
to,
little bit different there.
okay, they were right there.
They are right there. So the reason they had to put a pumping station in is because they had to go over the creek.
Okay,
So it wasn't that it was just too low, it was, they didn't want to dump raw sewage into, I think it's Farmer's Ditch, is what's out there, so.
okay,
I was wondering, so good.
go ahead.
So maybe could we, think about, we're gonna change the definition of urban farmer, add something to it so that it gives us
Flexibility.
flexibility there. Just make a note about
So
that.
what are you thinking? I
don't know.
focused on the conservation neighborhoods, and I would suggest taking out conservation easements in that paragraph preamble that's in the conservation neighborhoods.
On that page 24.
Yeah, it's on page 32, just above the definition of urban farmland. Because you can still have natural resource preservation without a conservation easement.
Yeah,
Because it says clustered residential uses, so it's
Yeah.
getting at what you were talking about, Suzanne, is asking the houses to all be close. But conservation easements is probably a little troublesome, because do we really want any more of those in town?
I think,
Right, and if you were to adjust this a little bit, what I would also ask is, with cluster development, you refrain from flagpole lots.
Yes.
Those are really hard for us to service. What I mean by a flagpole is you've got properties along that road frontage, and then in between two properties, you've got a driveway that goes out behind those properties for another home. It's called a flagpole lot.
And are you thinking of where on the map are you referring to? Because
All of this
conservation,
urban,
this is conservation neighborhoods is only that one.
I was talking urban farm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is the conservation easements is embedded in the conservation neighborhoods definition.
yeah,
And maybe that's
I think we should
it's
take that out.
archaic. 'Cause-
Yeah,
so
and
maybe-
just encourage, protect natural resources.
So that's-
Take out here.
And where are you there? Or
Well, you're,
or
on
encouraged
page
here,
32.
yeah.
Clustered residential uses and encourage protection of natural resources, something like that. And take out that whole and conservation easements are,
okay.
Clustered residential uses are encouraged. Is that what you would
no,
read?
conservation measures such as clustered residential uses, comma, and encourage protection of natural resources. Total, not
Just take out that
yeah,
phrase
just take out that.
of
I
conservation
think that's a
easements.
good idea, because
Okay. So, kind of in the same vein, a few years ago, I think it was the Department of Wildlife, came to the town and they were, let us know they're trying to get rid of tall fences, off the highway because it really, impacted the travel of, wildlife across the highway and they were kind of getting stuck. They were trying to get, I don't know if it was the agricultural uses or even the coal mine up there to remove, I think it was the agricultural farms. They were trying to get rid of some of those high fences that would trap the wildlife on the highway. So I'm wondering in this area, when we think of wildlife, the deer, the elk, they go down to the river at night, they come up from the river in the morning. And it's like a bloodbath on 133 in the wintertime. It's a very, very sad place to be driving. But my concern is as you see development out there and even agricultural development, you got to put up your big fence to keep those deer out of your property. So I'm kind of curious if it wouldn't be worth talking to the Department of Wildlife and seeing if they have any kind of, maybe can help us with how would you plan for wildlife travel, corridors and stuff. And that might be something that maybe we could get some input on. And I think it would be worthwhile. I'm just throwing it out there. I don't have no idea how it would be done, but I think it's something we should be sensitive to.
I don't think you can do that in the comp plan though.
Yeah, I
I
know,
think
but
that's an
That's more
aside.
legislative, and
yeah,
I
but
haven't seen anything from CPW. I haven't seen anything come through about fence heights.
oh, they haven't done it for our town, but they were trying to work with property owners all up and down the highway to take down fencing material. And I was like, boy, I'd like to get my hands on some of that stuff. It would be for free, but.
Because I know we do have a wildlife corridor further to the west of town between us and Hotchkiss. It's on the other side of Big Beans
Yeah.
that goes to Hotchkiss. And there's really no fences. They'll just kind of pop out of nowhere, but
Yeah.
that's the only wildlife corridor I'm really aware of.
Well, I don't know how this would look like even.
So could under urban farmland at the very end, it says support agricultural uses and land conservation and take out comma, and then encourage wildlife corridors
Or
because
development that encourages a place for
something like
wildlife.
that, because where we are,
Wildlife
we,
connectivity.
we're definitely a corridor right up to Jumbo. So we just have to be careful how we protect our plants and pets.
So I'm looking at the definition and then what's in the key for this, on here, it's called an urban farm, right? But in our, which has a completely different connotation than urban farmland. And so in the definition, it's actually called urban farmland, where I think it should be called urban farm. Because then it says that the primary use isn't just fields, it's a house, and then you've got a supporting use of farmland. You see the difference here? We're on our map, we're looking at urban farm, and this says to me that you're gonna have some sort of residential house surrounded by some sort of ag land. Whereas urban farmland, and they even say your primary use is agricultural, which means field, right, or it's house, but it really should be a single family dwelling with a supporting use of fields, farmlands.
So then we should change that on page
Unless you want it to be this way.
Oh, I see.
They would change it on
They
this
don't, they
form.
comport, they don't
On page
comport. The
32.
legend says
I
urban
mean,
farm.
we should jive.
Yes, they
Urban
definitely need
farmland,
to.
we got urban farm.
So that was
Right.
very confusing,
So
actually.
yeah, let's just change
Yeah,
that.
that's more.
So what would you
typographical.
prefer it to be, farmland or farm?
I think farm, because farmland puts it in a designation of that's.
This is all it is, right?
Right.
It's like you can grow things inside the town limits.
So
or
on page
something.
32, we just change urban farmland to urban farm.
And is that,
And then you could add, if you want, and encourage wildlife corridors. And that then would,
yeah,
back then, when somebody came to get a permit to build out there, it could be, well, wait, how are you gonna fence it? Then you could address it.
or are you gonna have an access for those animals that get down to the
Or you-
river?
You know, in that Creek Vista, on the creek side, they can only have 4-foot high fences, so the deer can hop back and forth. So, you know, there's all kinds of ways to do it. If you just put it in there, then that leaves it open to discuss how to do that when somebody comes for a permit.
So what is the wording that you were suggesting there, Lynn, or
So at
did
the
you?
end of urban farm, we're changing that, could include clustered and single-family housing to support agricultural uses, land conservation, and wildlife corridors.
Okay.
While avoiding flagpole development.
Thanks for mentioning that.
Yes.
So if I could offer for a primary use, single-family residence, and then supporting uses, because true urban farm is, you're raising your eggs to sell, and then you have a market somewhere on that property. So maybe a supporting use would be, like a farm stand or agricultural stands for selling produce and things like that.
Could that be problematic off the highway there, if the only access is 133?
So if you going, I'm just gonna use this as an example, going from here to Hotchkiss, you see a lot of turnoffs, especially in the summer and spring, where you've got people that have stands right off the side of the road. There's a wood shop where I've gotten wood from, right off the road as well. So, but to keep it safe, they would also have to follow through with requirements of our corridor 133 plan, which says you have to have a safe driveway, things like that. So it would be considered a supporting use, and that I think that gets more to the meat potatoes of what was being discussed. That this should be urban farm, where you're able to have a property that's large enough to grow, hobby farm and produce enough for sale. Then you have a spot where you can sell it as well.
Yeah, that'd be good.
You can do that inside of town too. It's not like, I mean, we're not talking about really zoning here, right?
We're talking land use designation.
I think even in town, anybody can have a fruit stand in their yard. I think that's in the law, actually, in the.
Cottage industry stuff, yes.
And I think agriculture is exempted from a lot of.
You still want to vote in your comp plan.
So we would add that at the end of supporting uses. I like that idea.
Say
Open
what that would
space,
be.
conservation, institutional, and what did you call it? Urban farm stands?
Say, it could be commercial activities of support or something to that effect.
And we already have uses that support agriculture, including small scale retail.
Yeah.
It's already-
There you go.
That's already there.
So that would.
Even I.
Okay,
Okay.
so we don't need to change that. Okay. So should we move on?
Okay.
Hey, where did you see that?
It's with the bullet points under.
Maybe pull it out of parentheses.
Supporting uses,
Yeah.
AG. So you just take out the EG, so uses that support agriculture,
Such as worker housing.
I mean, that could be large storage sheds.
Could be.
I mean, what exactly does uses that support agriculture mean?
Well,
That's-
small scale retail is not a storage shed.
It could be equipment sheds, it could
So
be,
retail.
so they kind of took uses that support agriculture, and then they kind of narrowed it down
Yeah. It
to,
could be beehives. That's what we see a lot of on 133.
Would be what?
Right on the side of the road are beehives.
Yeah. That's retail. But like a tractor storage is not retail.
That would be more like
I would
a,
be concerned about,
Well,
that
worker
would be more like
housing,
a
that's,
secondary.
but that would be a.
beehives is worker housing.
Yes, it is.
Yes.
Really tiny, we could do a lot of those.
Worker bee.
Tiny
Worker bee
housing,
yeah.
worker bee. We already have that on 133.
So do you want to change what's in the parentheses there, or do you want to leave it?
Should we just leave it, or we can always work on, like.
I think leave it
maybe
myself.
If the public says anything, yeah,
But you did move up add new primary uses, right?
yeah. We did put new primary uses in there, right? Okay.
And that was the,
Single.
Single-family residential.
Residences. And so you can have ADUs then, if it's worker housing, so why aren't we putting ADUs out there too?
Should add that.
Okay. ADUs, worker housing. And small scale retail.
Do you know, did we define worker housing anywhere in the spec? In the definition?
I don't think so.
It's a
Let me
little
search
bit-
for it.
It's a little bit weird, I mean, why do you have to put worker housing in there?
So, and for ag, like you're gonna have seasonal workers someplace to live, but if you don't define it, the definition could be, I mean, it could be very migratory, so you could have seasonal workers that come in RVs, that could be considered worker housing. That kind of stuff.
It's not defined in our comp plan, but I wonder if it's defined in the housing needs assessment.
So can you limit it like that? I know, like when they were talking about like space to create, they were saying you can't limit your housing to just artists because that's discriminatory. So worker housing, and then what's a worker? I mean, most people work, you know?
So so that was also a little bit different. That space to create was specific to grants, right? It was a grant funded project. This is something within a designation we're calling urban farm, where one of the primary uses is farming, so agricultural farming, where you're gonna need some sort of seasonal worker. And I think in this context, worker housing fits with, you're talking about agricultural seasonal workforce housing. Right? I think to avoid any sort of headache down the road, whenever this were to come before you in like a special use review, to define what workforce housing is.
So
appropriate.
how about,
Yeah.
do we call it worker housing or workforce housing?
In this way, they're calling it worker housing, and I'm wondering if that workforce housing is different from worker housing, right? So the seasonal agricultural worker housing, or workforce housing is for people that, you think of it as like a starter home.
Okay,
Yeah.
So could you just add agricultural worker housing?
That could be being more prescriptive about it, but then also what that means, right? Are we okay with like RVs, like what you're seeing out at Farnsworth, right? Where it's becoming an RV park. Are we okay with that, or do we want something a little more permanent?
yeah, I think they're doing it as a business. I don't think it's worker housing at Farnsworth.
Right, but that's what this could turn into. So if you've got seasonal migratory workers that are coming in for agriculture, like to grow a pig, right? They could be living in RVs as they come up. And if you're okay with that, that's fine. Just be prescriptive about it.
Seasonal housing, seasonal worker housing.
Otherwise, I mean, if you're okay with an RV park on some of these urban farm designations, great, then we're okay with that. But if you want to see something a little more permanent, I think you should be prescriptive about it.
Yeah. Like a tiny home.
Right.
Or if you just say worker, comma, small housing, that would kind of put in a tiny home within there too, and then it gives a little more latitude to it.
Worker housing.
I wouldn't want to say seasonal agricultural housing, because I know what that looks like, and that's not gonna,
They have porta potties
well,
instead.
I've seen those a lot.
it's
Yeah.
very,
Midwest.
it's very minimal and cheap.
Yeah.
And, run down, it gets run down really quickly, so I like the idea of it, of thinking more of permanent housing, and when it's not worker, it could be rental, so it gives it some latitude
I
there.
wish we could talk to somebody who has a farm. that
Well,
would
talk to
use this
Casey
type
Crop,
of-
they have worker housing, or seasonal worker housing.
This type of, so for the work.
They do, they have the migrants that come
Exactly.
in every year and they live right there on the farm.
But I mean, they could maybe help choose the words a little bit better, help us with the wording of that a little bit. I mean, we're stretching here, we can put something in.
But I
and
don't
then
know that you want,
Maybe if we,
yeah, I mean,
okay,
I think.
So maybe the way that if you're wanting permanent, why don't you just say that, right? You say permanent worker housing.
Yeah,
okay.
and then that way it
I
can
like
be
that.
whatever. If it's, the worker's not there, it's rented out or something else.
But, trailers might not be a bad way too. I mean, it's like you don't, that's the thing is like, I don't know what farmers like. I mean, can they afford to have permanent housing up there?
So we
What
actually,
Home Depot is offering.
so now, think of, we're looking at this land use designation. But if we were to talk about zoning, we specifically have zoning for mobile.
Yeah.
Where it's allowed and where it's not allowed. And so if you're gonna say that, then, that's a really dense use because you can get so many units within a small amount of area. It's almost as dense as like multifamily apartment complexes, things like that. So if you're okay with that, then you would want to put that into this land use designation, such as trailer courts for worker housing. I mean, you put that in there. If you're not, you want to say permanent housing, and maybe put in parentheses affixed to a foundation, something like that, or a slab.
Okay, well, this is kind of like envisioning a future. It's not mandating it at this point in time, right? But that's a good.
But I'm almost certain it's going to come before you in a special use review.
So the thing is, though, the Colorado 130, the Highway 133 plan, everything is prefaced with, you've got to disguise it. It can't be an eyesore from the highway, basically. So whatever you do, I mean, do you want to leave some flexibility out there for property owners? But the caveat is it can't be an eyesore. It has to fit in with the.
So you want to talk about screening, appropriate screening in
Yeah,
your
as
definitions too?
appropriate screening if it's.
But again,
Yeah, I
we're
think
only
that's
talking
in
in town.
Yeah.
We can't regulate
No,
areas A and B only in town.
but we can regulate the building out there because they do have to get building permits, right?
But you can, because that's what's in that agreement. This is what the county will do for us. So if we were to put something into our comprehensive plan now, we can use that to do an amendment to our Highway 133 agreement with the county and say, hey, this is the stuff that would be okay with us now, 15 years later.
Okay.
Thanks, Mr.
It would be good to hear from the public out there too. I mean, I don't know if they know that we're like making plans for them. So,
Well,
anyway,
maybe we can tag this one to bring it up when there is the public hearing, what are people's thoughts about this?
yeah,
And the terminology and what would you add or take out?
yeah,
So that might be a good one to really target for that public meeting.
yeah.
And that might be something throughout this whole thing we look at to start conversations. What are some of the things that we've struggled with?
Mhm. Yeah, you don't want to inadvertently make it so strict that it makes it hard for people, but at the same time, you want to make something that's stays within this agreements in this document about the aesthetics of the.
Well, it'd be good to have a way to kind of keep things on track for the public hearing. So like to bring up specific, things within this that then, and we've spent a lot of time discussing it. So we don't even have kind of a real clear idea where we should go with that. So that might be one of the ones that we really put out there for the public.
Can have in the document this or this,
Yeah,
give people something to chew on.
kind of like what we did with the questionnaire. but
Mhm.
more specific,
Mhm.
so that we, you know, if we're struggling with this, then let's say this is one that we really need to put up to the public too.
Are you sure it requires building permits in this 133? I just did a word search for permits, building, I didn't get anything. IGA.
It does, it
It's in the
says.
IGA, yeah, can you point that out? Do you have that in the 133?
Says here.
Because doesn't the IGA, no, actually, IGA doesn't require them. Because we only supposedly require them in our code if they use a town water tap.
No, it's out toward, I don't know how far out here it is, but it's out toward Conoco.
Land uses, this is on page 19 of that document.
Okay, hang on, I'm getting there.
It says, applicants seeking a specific development permit from Delta County to conform to the following permitted or special review uses will receive incentives from both Delta County and the town of Paonia that include but are not limited to. So there is a development. So if you're going for like a specific development permit, you from Delta County, you have to follow this document. So they're gonna have a checklist.
It's streamlined review procedures, preference for water sewer taps, discounted tap fees, pre-annexation agreement, possibly other negotiated terms. Applicants, in addition to compliance with the following uses, applicants must comply with building and site design standards that include landscaping, lighting, access signage, non-motorized access setbacks, but whose standards?
The standards in this document.
Okay.
So they have
Not
those
a
land use
building
policies.
permit. It's standards here, not a literal building permit.
Correct, that's why I'm saying,
What's that?
Page 13 is the building standards.
Okay,
yes.
but not a permit from
And so
us.
that's why I'm saying, whatever we do in this comprehensive plan, we can use to inform an amendment to this agreement.
Okay,
There is something that talks about building permits, and it's not this document. It's,
This has design standards.
yeah,
yeah, which are good, but But-
there is something that I've seen
Can we
that talks
go to
about building permits. And I think it's an MOU. No, I think it's an MOU.
I
I
think,
have to see if I can.
I was gonna say, if it's an MOU, it really ought to be an IGA, because there's.
yeah,
Yeah.
and that would be the county relinquishing their lack of permits to Paonia in county. Would they do
Okay.
that?
Well, that's within our 3 mile.
So they do, so like the only ones I've gotten recently, I mean, if you look at some of the permitted uses by right, we would be okay with those. So the special permitted uses in this agreement are like car dealerships, which we would really want to have a say in, right?
Yeah.
But the ones I've been getting are for like, here it comes, Verizon adding to our cell tower.
Mhm.
That's really what it's meant for.
But so as long as these design standards are maintained and imposed, that's as far as we can go. We're not gonna be slapping a green permit sign on their construction.
We're gonna let the county do that.
They don't have permits, they don't have building code.
We don't have a building code in the county.
But isn't that part of the pre-annexation agreement?
It
You
is,
have to build to Paonia's code?
it is.
I couldn't tell you that, I just
And so
know it's
they already-
associated with a water tap.
Right, so what this agreement also talks about, or this document also talks about, is getting into a pre-annexation agreement.
Right,
And that they will follow the development standards in this document.
But that doesn't mean they're annexed, it's just a pre-annexation agreement, because don't we have statutory,
But if
they have to, it has to be contiguous to certain 1/5 or
That's if
1/6?
if we're gonna take them over. If they wanna annex to us, it's different.
They don't have to be touching?
Well, they
We
can,
can
they
have-
have to be touching, but they don't have to be surrounded.
So 133, we would not annex.
we could.
I mean, we'd have to, if they have to be
There's some
touching,
homes that have reached out that want to be annexed.
but do they still have to touch existing town property to
I
be
have to get
annexed?
back to you.
Like,
Yeah, they do, they have to have a certain
Can't have little
percentage
islands.
they have to have a certain percentage that's contiguous with
even
the
if,
town.
even if they ask to be, right? So what I'm asking is, those people on 133 they wanted us to connect to their sewer, but they're how many feet from any town boundary?
They still have to be under a pre-annexation agreement that says, once that line is there, you have to annex there.
But how do you annex them in and not violate statute if they're supposed to be?
That's what I'm saying is,
a
that
contiguous-
pre-annexation agreement is saying, once it gets, that boundary gets to you, you have to annex.
Oh, so it's future. That's what I was asking.
Yeah.
If the boundary ever gets there,
You have
You
to.
have to annex, but it may never get there.
That would be really a shame.
But,
Stop and say,
No, I know, it's like
But I mean-
that's big revenue.
They really would.
and so I want to get to the building permit
Yeah.
part. So if they are gonna do a pre-annexation agreement out there in the green, they have to build to the town's building code?
They have to build to what is in this agreement,
This agreement,
correct?
okay, which doesn't get into
Which
the,
is why I'm saying whatever you put in the comprehensive plan can be used as an amendment for this agreement,
And also, this agreement only applies to commercial and
and not
multifamily.
residential, or single family,
okay,
which we can amend if our comprehensive plan says, yeah.
So
okay.
this is kind of a free ranging conversation here. But one of my questions is, as we annex out toward there, are we gonna be annexing agricultural land? Because their property taxes are so much lower. And if we depend on the property taxes to maintain the roadways and stuff, and we have people that we provide services to, but their taxes are really low, that could be a problem, right? So, I mean.
Not really,
Not
because we're already providing services to them, we're just not getting paid for it. So it
Okay.
could be anything from snow plowing to, our police department does a lot of calls for service out there.
133.
Along 133 and all of the residences along, Stall Road and Price. And so they do all of these calls for service out there, but it's because of a mutual aid agreement that we have with the sheriff's department.
So it's not like a conservation easement that has a $1 a year property tax or whatever. This is, and so once you are in town as an agricultural property, it's not the same as county taxes at that point either, right?
Right, so because there would still be a millage rate assessed to it, right, from us, from the town,
Okay,
where they would pay based on their assessed value. So it'd be the same millage rate, I believe, it's 8.322 that everybody pays. But it would be attached to that value on that property. Nobody in their right mind with ag land would annex in unless they knew for a fact that they were going to develop it. Right, so if they were going to develop it into, maybe some homes, single family homes, they wouldn't annex them.
okay.
It'd be silly for them.
Lots of things going on.
I just remember, a long time ago, there were some town administrative candidates that were interviewing, and one guy, it was on I-70 out there by the gas fields, basically, and I remember this applicant said, the biggest mistake I ever made as town administrator is we annexed that trailer park. And for some reason, I guess it turned out to be a very expensive deal for the town, and I don't know why, but that also is kind of stuck in my mind, just like there could be places you don't want to annex.
You could have had all the meters under the trailers.
But we got a park,
And
We're gonna fix that, though. It's all gonna be fixed.
I think it's, yeah.
No, it's gonna be fixed. No,
Well, even, we have to fix it even with that.
Okay,
Oh, where were we?
okay, so we kind of were in this page,
Farm worker.
urban farm, conservation neighborhood, have we kind of,
Well, we decided that
included those areas?
we could come up with wording that we felt appropriate, maybe between now and the public hearing, so
Okay, worker
we
housing.
thought about maybe that would be one of the questions
Okay,
that we would present.
And I just did a quick word search in the housing needs assessment. I just did a worker housing and it only shows up twice. And it's not defined in the housing need assessment action plan.
okay.
So we don't have a definition to pull from. And we don't really have definitions in the comp plan.
I wonder if
So-
because of the problem we had with short-term rentals and everything else with no definition, should we kind of have? So that it's not, it's something that we can again put in later on. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it just seems like the document doesn't, right now isn't set up to have a definition section.
Right,
but-
yeah.
So
Doesn't mean it can't.
you do kind of define it, right? So you've defined urban farm. When you see that on a map, you go, what the heck is urban farm? Well, you've defined it. You've got a whole blurb what urban farm is. a whole blurb on what conservation neighborhoods are, things like that. What you could do within urban farm is worker housing is defined as,
Here,
Is
right
what?
here.
Yeah.
within
Right here.
urban farm, you would say worker housing is defined as,
Yes,
and leave it within, underneath urban farm.
yeah.
Would you like to try to come up with a definition so people have something to chew on tonight? Worker housing is defined as permanent buildings affixed to a slab, foundation, that's the engineer.
What about
That's-
like, sheep farmer trailers or something? I mean, there could, I don't know. What do you?
No,
say
because
that?
you can't really live in a trailer in town. It's
Well,
not hooked
this is
up.
out of town
right?
though.
Well, we can't affect out of town,
But isn't this urban farm, this is all out of
but,
town?
but
We're
our
just-
comp plan, I don't think.
I
our
thought
comp-
we were kind of directing the county, if this happens in this area, this is what we'd like to see, isn't that?
That's what I've been saying.
But
That's
that,
what we've been saying.
but don't we need to amend the 133 highway, our comp plan
We're gonna use that.
to amend the
inform-
133,
Correct.
right? So I wouldn't think we'd want in our comp plan, just because our comp plan really is in town, where we have the most.
Except for this element.
Except for
Okay,
this element.
Yes.
But do we want people living in RVs that aren't hooked up to a sewer or water?
I have opinions, but that's.
As an anecdote,
Mhm.
this is just one instance, but one of the nastiest things I've seen in my engineering career was going to an urban farm housing place in Boulder County. It was, they had a couple trailers, they had been damaged by different things, there were still people living in them. There were no functional bathrooms, there were no porta potties, there were horse stalls where probably 20 humans were just using as a bathroom. I mean, it was disgusting. So anything we can do to not encourage that?
Yeah.
So it's like
Good
to
idea.
protect the health and safety.
Yeah.
I mean, there are county requirements that would prevent that type of thing from happening were it noticed, but I would not be into encouraging trailer type housing in an urban farm.
So I have seen, like orange roads, right? So, they pull up a trailer and they would have an exterior septic tank enclosed on the ground that would be pumped out regularly, by like a septic company. And so that's one way that they did worker housing is you set a trailer, you have the septic tank that's open to all the elements and it gets pumped out regularly. But a lot of times it doesn't get pumped out regularly and then it ends up in the orange grove. So.
Yeah, I say permanent.
I like permanent
Foundations.
housing with a foundation.
And we can hear from the public if they read this and they want to. Expound on anything a little bit or express their concerns. Okay, on permanent foundations,
I like the word affixed.
affixed.
Affixed,
Affixed to a permanent,
oh, affixed to a permanent.
or housing affixed to a permanent foundation. I mean, that's right out of HUD.
Is that what you get in the mobile home parks? Are they affixed to permanent
Well,
foundations?
there's a HUD requirement. Yeah, like if you want, particularly if you want funding for it, if you want insurance for it, it needs to be affixed. I mean, I've done that a lot where they want funding and for a trailer and we have to come in after the fact and add a foundation to it. Because
So it's just a slab, basically.
Not necessarily. So the difference between manufactured home and like a trailer comes on, it's got a hitch basically. And so the requirements are that it's, usually you just have a strip footing that the interior supports rest upon, but then there's a skirt that goes around the edge. And what makes that permanent rather than just having like metal skirting around there to keep the critters out or to hide it, to screen it. You have a concrete foundation that it attaches to with clips. And so it prevents like wind or seismic action from taking the structure off of the foundation. And then also allows you to insulate it, keep it, keep critters out of there.
Okay.
So tie downs like helical piers, is that what? Helical piers are a little more permanent.
Helical piers are a type of foundation.
But it's more tie downs, right?
Right.
That metal strip.
Yep, exactly.
Does what you just described meet the definition of a fixed to a permanent foundation?
It doesn't.
So it's not like super expensive. It doesn't have to be, it sounds like it. There's some expense in the contract.
There's definitely some expense. I mean, you know,
Yeah.
in my experience, most of the homeowners I've seen that have a trailer as primary residence are already struggling financially. And so the idea of adding concrete, it can be cost prohibitive. It can be expensive.
Can they do a perimeter, cinder block foundation? So that would be less expensive than something a homeowner could do.
But a cinder block foundation is supposed to have a little frost, right?
You still have to have, yeah, footing defrost, so the bottom of the, you would have concrete footer
On a
and then
footer.
CMU build up on top, so block on top.
Can that still considered permanent as well?
Okay. Okay, are pole barns, is a pole barn scenario permanent at all? I mean, the foundation?
Yeah.
Okay,
It's a different type of foundation, but yeah.
okay. Okay, great. So there's like some options there. We're not, okay, great. Okay,
So we're leaving that one open for, right now, we're saying permanent, affixed to a permanent foundation.
Worker housing is defined as permanent housing, or is defined as housing affixed to a permanent foundation, is that right?
And maybe you add that meant to support the agricultural functions of urban farm.
Well, it's associated with worker housing in parentheses under urban farm.
Right.
So the thought was just to define worker housing in this urban farmland supporting uses. Because I don't think worker housing shows up. Page 61. 32. And farm worker housing shows up in the comp plan on page 61 under econ. Goal 16. Support the continuation and expansion of local agricultural production through the establishment of farm worker housing, agriculture, education, and value-added food crop processing infrastructure. So farm worker housing, it could be repeated here, what we have, which would probably be a good thing to repeat what it means in both places.
Could we just put a star and then a definition down on the bottom? like
Could do
a
that.
footnote?
Yeah, on
Make a
that page, on both pages could do that.
Yeah, anywhere it shows up.
But that's the only two places
I
that
would
show that.
prefer that if you do footnotes, you start numbering them.
Well, we already have.
And you already have some in the housing element, right?
Yes.
Housing element. So they would need to be renumbered.
Or just define what it is in both places similarly. I think that's better personally. Make sure it just says the same thing on both pages.
The only thing I would say is if we're gonna do that, we somehow cross-reference, so anything is corrected or changed at any point in time, it's,
you know.
you notice it to go back and change it in
Yeah.
other places.
Yeah, that's,
That makes it so much easier.
There, we do have workforce housing under. What is affordable and workforce housing on page 70? I don't know if that's,
in workforce, I wonder if
that's
it's not,
different.
what page is it on, 70?
70, yes. Workforce,
It's in that
I think
little,
that's broader,
it's kind
but
of broad.
it is broader, but
because it's under the housing element.
yeah, exactly.
I think workforce is a much broader term than agricultural housing.
Mhm.
So to me, that doesn't seem to be a problem, as long as we consistently reference what farm work housing is. And again, that. was
Farm
on
work
page
housing, it's
61.
kind of funny because in a way, it sounds like it could be a lot more diminished than a regular house. Right?
Well, it kind
A
of
lot more
is.
temporary.
Yeah, well,
Okay. A
it's,
lot more.
again, it seems
smaller,
like
yeah.
it's designed for a seasonal use.
Yeah,
Whereas
So it
we're
might
looking
not
for permanent 12 month a year.
Yeah, you're not
workforce.
looking at like, it might shut down in the winter time when it's
Mhm.
0 degrees outside.
Right.
So it's like mobile homes with that thick of insulation, you know?
Mhm. I mean, I think, does that seem reasonable? That would be the distinction between workforce housing, which is a big part of the housing needs
It's more of
assessment,
a year
and
round thing.
farm work housing, farm worker housing. So we're clearly making a distinction.
Okay.
It might be, farm worker housing probably is gonna be a little bit lower cost, but hopefully it's.
I like the word seasonal more than I like the word temporary.
Yeah.
I think seasonal is a better word.
Yeah.
That, it sounds more,
Well, we're not
We're
using
not
that
doing
anymore.
temporary if we're talking about a permanent foundation.
yes.
But we're not using, I just was describing what I see it as, but we
Yeah.
don't use seasonal in here.
Yeah.
I don't think.
I would like to not say
Yeah.
temporary.
Do you wanna see
Right.
seasonal in there somewhere, Lucy, or not
No.
really? Okay.
No, I don't think we need to
Double
restrict
check
it
it.
to that. I mean, I think that's kind of what we have in our head, but I don't think
And I
that's.
don't necessarily think it's smaller insulation, because even in the summer, it's pretty hot, so, out the heat.
But since we have workforce housing and then we have supporting use worker housing, do we want to say farm worker housing?
Well, the less insulation, the quicker it cools down. And if you're outside all day, it'll cool down at night really well.
Do we want to make that more specific? Right there?
What,
Okay,
okay, where we.
let me throw a
were-
wrench in this.
Let's go back.
We do use the word seasonal, but it's to hire seasonal and full-time wage workers.
I'm just.
Where's
So I don't know, this is in 5 places in the comp plan. The term seasonal is used in actually more than that. Well, it's under, this is, hang on, let me see where I am in the document.
Well, that's stricken from what.
Yeah, the first one's stricken, but it's under the intro, I think. Hang on.
Oh, this
About
is,
Paonia, that's the first place, and then it goes all the way to page 65, which is transportation. Oh, no, seasonal wildlife, that one's fair. Seasonal closures, seasonal restrictions, let me see what that one is.
I don't have any seasonal wildlife in my yard. They're there all year round.
Let's see, here we go. Due to the nature of the food, agriculture, and entertainment businesses located here and the associated increase in tourists, this is under Appendix A, Economic Development. That these businesses also bring in many of Paonia's current wage jobs are seasonal. And it's reflecting agriculture, food, and entertainment.
okay, so, yeah, so I have one on page 88,
Yep, I'm just
and
there.
that is Appendix A, Economic Development.
And that's
where it
what-
talks about seasonal workers in need of housing.
One on page 16.
And then there's
Yeah.
one on page, 16, but again, this is demographics,
Yeah,
so it's,
it's not
yes.
prescriptive. It's not in a goal or anything. But we haven't used the word seasonal. Right now, we have worker housing is defined as affixed to a permanent foundation. That's all I
Do you
have
want
written
to
down.
say farm worker housing? That was my question.
Well, in one place it does say farm worker, and then in, it doesn't,
But I mean, under the,
yeah, in this
on
one,
page, what
that
was
other
that,
second-
23?
that second one I found said farm.
What page in the packet was that?
Let me get back to that, because 32 is the one we're looking at. Hang on, I gotta do a word search again. Switched out. See if it shows up again. Sorry.
Page 33, page.
Well, I found it in another place. It was under economic development.
Oh, that was Appendix A, but
No, it was a farm worker. It was under econ.
Oh, you
but
got
hang on,
farm
how did-
worker.
what is the word
You did
search?
say it was econ.
Yeah, what was the word search term I used?
Workforce, maybe? Worker
Worker
housing, worker
housing.
housing.
I think-
Yeah,
I think
worker
you
housing.
used
Okay,
worker
let me do that
housing.
again.
And tell us what.
And it
the
said,
date
oh, it
is.
was farm dash worker housing. I think it was hyphenated.
and to be clear, you're talking farm worker housing under urban farm, right? Not workforce housing, which is clearly defined in the housing.
Right. And in econ, the second one is farm dash,
What page are you?
and it's on page 61. And it's policy, econ policy 16, and it is farm hyphen worker housing.
So do we want to stay consistent and
It might be
use that
good.
under that urban farm?
Yeah, maybe call it farm worker housing is defined as permanent housing affixed to as housing affixed to a permanent foundation. I have that in my notes, that doesn't mean that's what we want.
Worker house defined as housing affixed to a permanent. So it would be, we would add the word farm,
Yeah, let's do that.
so we're consistent.
Yeah.
here. Other-
One's on 32 and one's on 61.
61.
So we would change urban farm, would be farm worker housing. 32. Yep, and that's easy to do. Farm hyphen worker housing is defined as housing.
So we'll call them both farm dash worker housing. We'll find them both in each section and then reference each other.
Right.
That was 32.
Is defined as housing on affixed to a permanent foundation.
Yes.
Okay.
Was that it within the future land use with those two definitions? Or have we even touched conservation neighborhood?
Well, we talked a little bit about conservation neighborhood, but not much.
And removing conservation easements.
Yeah, we talked about removing the conservation easements.
Right.
Yeah, so that would say conservation measures such as clustered residential uses and encourage the protection of natural resources and mitigation of the impacts of natural hazards like flood and fire.
So my question is, going up onto Lambour Mesa, on this really steep hill here, why is that called urban farm and not conservation neighborhood? If it's too steep to develop anyway, and it's just wildlife up there, it's above the Stewart Ditch.
Yeah, it's larger acreages that are used for farming.
You talking about clocks are, right?
No, I'm talking about the hillside, it's dry land.
Yeah.
And
So it's-
there's a lot of water issues that get created there downtown.
Green.
Is that what you're talking, this is clock, isn't it?
No, the hillside there is all green. You know, the steep dry hill right here behind us?
This here, the peninsula looking thing?
Yeah, that's the all hillside. On the very top is what Clocks is, but the whole hillside going up to it is, you know, what that is.
Yeah, but I'm not
Well, what cliff
sure,
house is
Yeah,
it?
what would you designate it?
I'm not sure it has to be that defined in this general map, because you kind of have to look at the landscape and go, nobody's gonna
I
build
think
on
it's
it.
that some of it's so
Never
steep,
say
it can't
never.
be you.
Well, I mean, we have, to me, that doesn't bother me, because we don't have a land use for,
It's
a
in the
land use-
zoning regulations,
right.
you can't build on steep slopes.
Right,
Without-
right.
Well, you can, but you have to go through special review for that.
what you would hope.
Yeah, and it hasn't happened in the past, so
New day dawning.
things have been
So that's,
built
yeah, I
right
know.
on the irrigation ditch, in fact.
Yeah, I mean,
On the
I just
steep
think it's
slope.
general enough that,
Okay. Okay. There's a plan for a golf course to go up there one time.
no, that's dead. Well, that was the arch,
No.
oh,
It was
closer to
right up
town.
there, yeah, that's why they did that. Wanted to get.
Can you imagine a ball coming down into town?
Well, the water would have been a terrible problem. You know that water that we hear about there where people are complaining about it in their cellars?
Oh.
A lot of it comes from irrigation on top of the mesa.
Mhm, making its way down.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and it's a real problem, the high water table that it creates by the end of the summer. It's not just the ditch, it's the irrigation and it's
Yeah.
the springs.
The geology being what it is. That makes
Okay.
sense.
Okay, so, okay. So, conservation neighborhoods, how did you manage to get that in your neighborhood and not my neighborhood? I always feel like there's a little bit of influencing there, but, so, well,
you know.
So when we talk about, the wildlife corridors, and that's a little weird because, it's not like wildlife just go where you tell them to go. So, I know we've identified the river and the creek as wildlife corridor, but the irrigation ditch is a huge wildlife corridor. All along that hillside, the wildlife are living there, and, I see more hoof prints on our sidewalks in town than I see footprints when it snows. So I don't know, it's nice to put the wildlife corridor stuff in here, but it's like,
I see it in the middle of the street.
they're all over the place.
It's the whole place.
Yeah.
Well, this isn't gonna keep the animals from going
Yeah, what-
places, it's
what-
just a
Because we
repetition.
have a fencing.
Yes.
you know,
What page are we on with that?
33.
33, okay. Oh, right here, I'm looking at it backwards. Okay, so water wildlife corridors.
So when you're talking wildlife corridors like that are managed by BLM or, some other agency, state or federal agency, it's because those are historic areas that migratory patterns happen from. And when we're talking a wildlife easement, we're not talking 10 feet wide, we're talking acres. And so that's a little bit different than in town. If we were to do something like that in town, and all of a sudden by this comprehensive plan, you were telling somebody, hey, look, if you want to put a shed on your property now in the back of your yard, now we've got this wildlife easement here, you can't build there anymore. That's going to present problems. So it's a little bit different when we're talking those. And I think, like I'm dealing with one right now with our water plant for the temporary tank, right? We had to get special permission to even build our temporary tank. And they said it wasn't going to impact it because we were on the edge of that wildlife corridor, which is more acres long, not
Okay.
a few feet long.
I think this statement just is to create awareness that, we're all in a wildlife corridor here. And so it basically says recognize and protect, blah, blah, blah. So it isn't really anywhere on the map specifying that has to be a wildlife corridor.
Well, it says the areas are the Gunnison River and the Minnesota Creek along with a 200-foot buffer. So that's kind of identifying
Yeah,
specific
but
corridors.
that's just but in terms of the rest of the map,
What page is that?
It's on
really-
page 33, it's the very last item.
but
I'm
it,
almost wondering if that was information pulled directly from state documents, where there are existing wildlife
it
corridors.
already exists.
Yeah.
'Cause
In
we're
referring
on-
ways,
we have that
yeah.
on our property.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So would we say call state identified or, can we like
Calling it out would be good, right?
reference where that statement comes from?
And on this land use map, it just calls it River Creek Corridor on the
Yeah.
flume. So it's not defined under a specific building definition.
Right.
It's more informational.
Okay, I mean, it could impact how you put a fence up in your yard if your
You
yard
can't.
backs up to something.
Yeah,
Yeah, but who tells you can't? I mean, where's that?
well, the building permit,
You have to
if
get
you
a
do
fence
put a
permit.
fence and it's within that 200-foot buffer, it can only be like 4 feet high, so the animals can.
As of right now, you don't need a building for
But
fence.
what I find with
Just approval.
fencing is
Just
I
for review.
I-
I don't need to do those.
go ahead.
It's what?
That'll be another conversation.
I see all sorts of building going up where there's no one to watch it. The only places that are really regulated are along the roadways where people can really see what people are doing, but things, especially, you really think the people on top of Lamborn Mesa are getting permits to put fencing around their yard?
I had a meeting, on my vacation. I came in on, was it Wednesday? I came in and met with somebody up on the Mesa that wanted to put in a structure, they call it tiny home. And so, yeah, they are meeting with us and doing those
Water,
things.
probably.
That was the big thing. So how are you gonna get water? You put in
Yeah.
a cistern? So,
Yeah, but I mean, I think at the end of Second Street, all the development that's gone on in that developing resources property, it's like, you don't even see it from the road, and it's like people can do whatever they want, basically, if you, and in terms of fencing, I mean, housing is a lot different, that's really, and fencing is a lot more less impactful in a way, you know, it's like not as permanent as a house,
I don't
but.
remember if anything going on Second Street that isn't permitted.
Well, I'm just kind of wondering, when I walk on the irrigation ditch, I look down, I'm like, oh, that looks like a new fence. I wonder if they got a fence permit for that.
Probably not, we should try to move it.
Yeah, so I mean, that's what I'm
That's quite
saying.
good, it's easy.
So when you're back up to a wildlife corridor, there's no one, you know, it's like, there's not a street there, there's not a sidewalk there, so I guess you just have to let people know, you know, just so they can kind of self-police a little bit. The reason why we don't want to put a huge fence there is because there's a wildlife corridor. And
Isn't that in the building code? I mean, it can only be if you're within, your back fence can only be 6 foot high and your front side fences. If you're close to the river corridor, it can only be
it
4
doesn't say
feet.
anything about river corridor in the fence ordinance.
Yeah, our
I
fence
think
ordinance
it-
doesn't.
It's, our fence, so
Because it was-
it's all part of, that is all part of the wide encompassing code rewrite that we're currently in the process of doing.
Yeah,
So to me, it just reaffirms how important it is to at least have
And
one.
it sounds like fences need to be addressed in that apparently, so.
I thought the code rewrite was just to fix some problems. It wasn't like to address what we're working on now. When I read the contract, it was
It's a comprehensive code. So if there's something with fencing, then I need to know so I can
okay.
get it fixed.
Okay, so we kind of beat that one to death, right? Do we want to say anything more on that topic? Water and wildlife corridors?
I'm good
I
with
do
that.
like the idea of adding as described by the state somewhere
Yeah.
in there. I don't know where.
So it doesn't sound like an arbitrary thing that we've just kind of.
I mean,
popped in
that
there.
200-foot buffer,
Okay,
yeah.
okay. So, okay,
Where do you want to put that?
Because this will all be a motion,
yeah.
Yeah,
so it needs to be clear.
so it maybe could be in front of these areas consist of, you know, based upon the.
See,
It is prescribed by the Colorado Parks and Wildlife.
okay,
And just as a lead
As
into that
prescribed.
sentence.
Right, I
After
think
creek.
maybe the 200-foot buffer as prescribed by the Colorado
Yeah.
Parks and Wildlife.
as described by Colorado. Absolutely. Okay. And how many houses really butt up to that anyway?
Even some are right into the street.
Okay.
Clark, thinking Clark Street,
And then we're talking, Mountain Seven.
Mount Lebanon, and where the other two.
Yeah, I mean, the creek runs right,
Quonset,
you know, so. There's quite a, it impacts quite a few areas.
Okay. Okay. Okay, so the downtown commercial for, I'm sorry, we kind of done with that. I'm kind of jumping back to the map elements down to the first item since we future land use categories, downtown commercial core. When we have mixed use is another type. And that's on page 30 and 31. The mixed use is showing up as purple. This map here. It's kind of interesting. Oh, maybe that is Fall Road right down there, actually. When you look at this map, it's kind of an interesting thing. I don't know what the property owner out here has plans for, where the dollar store was gonna go. I have heard that there's like this really high water table in that area, and it's kind of gonna be impossible to build anything. And I don't know if that's true, but are we kind of considering that when we look at future land uses of these areas of like natural conditions that exist that like it might make it impossible to build if it's a swamp or something, or?
Unless it's a floodplain or designated wetlands, which means it's state designated wetlands. Then there are things that, kick into motion, state statute that says you have to do this. If there is a high water table, there's ways of moving water to where it needs to go. But that's like something you kind of,
Mitigate that too.
yeah, it's part of your building permit process that you have to provide for a stormwater management plan. Period.
That's why, have you ever seen at the Conoco, have you looked at the Conoco between the gas station and the highway, there's like cattails, it's just a swamp there. Where's that all coming from? And it's kind of an interesting. The
Oh,
gas
stop.
station.
Oh, stop and say, okay.
Yeah.
So remember, I just came from a state where there's a high water table and you can de-water anything. So otherwise you wouldn't have coastal communities.
Okay. Okay, yeah, we've got water. It's really salty, it's high in solids. Okay, downtown commercial core, we have mixed use, which is,
Do we have any concerns on that wording anywhere?
so a lot of the uses are very similar in every single category. I tried to kind of make a chart, try to figure out what actually is missing in some, because a lot of them share so many of the categories that it's hard to. And again, I liked how Ridgeway actually had a little photograph of a neighborhood that next to that definition, so you could really see what kind of neighborhood that
We
looks
can
like.
have pictures.
Yeah, I think it would be good to add pictures. I don't know if our neighborhoods currently describe this use,
We could find some.
that would be, yeah,
I think you take a picture of like where the pub church is, right?
yeah.
And you've got mixed uses, residential, and I mean, it's gonna be a short-term rental, I think, I don't know.
Yeah, but a picture is worth 1,000 words, so I think that would be
That
useful.
would be a great way to interact with people, is ask for pictures for people to send in pictures that they think would meet these different categories for designations.
And you could do like industry, could do Black Rose,
Yeah.
gallery, Black Rose,
Oh,
right along the railroad tracks,
Yeah.
Elsa's property,
Yeah, is that her name?
like, that's a really, would make a nice picture.
Yeah. Okay, send pictures that describe use as a suggestion. Okay. Light industry. I'm kind of jumping ahead here. I don't know if did you guys have anything you wanted to comment on downtown commercial core and mixed use there?
Yeah.
Okay. Light industry. Commercial industries, storage, warehousing, wholesale, retail, agricultural processing, and institutional. You just want to make sure with a light industry, obviously, that it's compatible with surrounding residential uses. Mixed neighborhood, and that's something that we aren't talking about here, the compatibility with surrounding residential, when you have like agricultural processing in the middle of town. In the
Or a
like.
steel mill, right? You don't want a steel mill right next to residential.
Yeah, but I mean, ag processing, it would have to be, it can't conflict with the surrounding. That's the thing with our light industrial, if you look at it, it kind of followed the railroad tracks. Because that's where the fruit packing was, but it also goes right through the residential areas of town, and that's what makes it a little difficult. Okay. Mixed neighborhood. Okay, so warehousing, wholesale, retail. And hopefully that would all be with, screening if necessary. All this residential. There's that juice plant. It's just a couple of houses over from you, Steph, and it's where the church is now, that metal church on Oak there. There was a huge and there was a fire one night, it burned down, and the siding on that house, the powder blue house on the corner there, melted. There are trees that just died from the heat radiation.
That's a church.
Yeah, and now, they scraped that building, but it was a juice juicing plant at one point. It was vacant. Okay.
Oh, is that, it became a welding shop?
No, it's that church now.
The
It's
one that
just-
burnt? Was, I
Yeah.
thought it turned into a welding shop.
No,
It was a ceiling.
maybe it was, I don't know.
A
if it was-
ceiling tank went off. Started
No,
fire.
I heard it was a drug deal gone bad.
I'm glad it's gone.
Yeah, I don't know what the story was. It could have been that. I might have heard something like
It
that.
doesn't matter anymore.
Okay, that's history.
Yes.
Okay, mixed neighborhood, part of the oldest residential areas within the historic town grid. This area is predominantly defined by historical architectural styles. Residential density is slightly higher than other residential areas due to the proximity to the downtown commercial core. Mixed neighborhood is the tan that you, oh, it's kind of an orange.
Orange. It looks like it includes like, the bed and breakfast, the Ross Hotel, things like that.
It looks like it includes the low-tech building too, is what,
No, the Votech is the purple, it's mixed use. That's Peppers.
oh, that's Peppers.
Yeah,
and,
and then, yeah, and then it's also,
Oh, okay,
yeah,
okay. There's not a lot over there, actually, so. It's kind of, no, that's not, that's.
it's
the
just above
Votech.
Peppers, it looks like, yeah.
No, that's the Votech there. It's the Grand Avenue and Fifth Street and the little chopped up, I have a very small map
Look right there,
here.
that's Votech, that's Fifth,
Yeah.
perfect, that's Votech right there. And then up above is where we're talking.
Oh, yeah.
You know, Redwood's on the other side of the street.
Yeah, and I see the Lee's Park has that little loop thing in it.
Peppers Crunch Waffle, yeah.
So,
But
that's,
Crunch Waffle actually looks like it's purple, this looks like it's, a bunch of elm trees right now. If you go on the other, so you know where the irrigation shed is for the old Votech
yeah,
in the back, if you go across the street,
yeah.
it's a bunch of elm trees.
Oh, and that's in the county right now too, by the way. Not Peppers, but a lot of those houses.
I had to talk a friend out of buying that.
Really?
Why would they want to buy that?
I think it's a cute, Peppers is a cute building. Okay, so, and that goes to Lee's Park. So the next, and so that's mixed neighborhood. Residential including single family, duplex, triplex buildings, home districts, ADUs and institutions. Original town neighborhood. Development, should respect the scale and character of the existing development. Primary uses, single family dwellings, home businesses, ADUs and institutional. What does institutional mean? What could end up next to you if you have everything institutional everywhere? What are you asking for when institutional is everywhere?
Think of it like town properties,
What property?
like town-owned or school board-owned properties,
Okay,
so parks,
it's public institutional, not private institutional?
correct. So it's not like you put in like a convalescent home or something like that, this is,
What, is there a definition of that somewhere?
I didn't see one yet.
So it's like institutional means public properties?
Mhm.
Do we need to,
Should we have
we
that?
need to put that somewhere?
It's a pretty common planning thing.
Okay. Okay. We have our own language here, Stephanie. Okay. People interpret things. Okay, traditional neighborhoods, we just went over that conservation, then we're back to conservation neighborhoods, urban farm, historic core, gateways.
I think this map, my personal opinion is I think this map's missing two gateways. We have gateways coming from the highway, but we also have a gateway coming off of Colorado, Minnesota Creek, Colorado, and Lambert Mesa, right?
Oh, that's true.
I think we have four,
And we have-
it only shows two.
We have Black Bridge too,
Mhm.
and that's a really,
Oh, that's true, yeah.
But the big ones are Samuel Wade and Great Neck. That's where most of the traffic.
you know what I heard at one point? There was a kind of an uproar because there was a rumor going around that the county was planning on straightening Black Bridge Road. so it's not quite as dangerous.
Everybody flip out.
And
So-
people were really kind of worried that it was gonna take away from the kind of the meandering.
So I look at the missing gateways as population centers where people are trying to get into town, right? So Minnesota Creek, you've got a bunch of HOAs out there that are trying to get in, water companies that access town through that way. So I think there's a missing one at Minnesota and Colorado Ave. And then Lambert Mesa Road, right? We have a bunch of water companies out that way that I think we're missing a gateway. So you're looking at population centers trying to come into town that are out the county. And so I think you're missing a couple. Yeah.
But right now gateways are defined, or described as the two main, play a crucial role in connecting town to Highway 133 and
They're
represent
tourist
key
gateways.
entry points into town.
I think you add to it.
Well, hang on, I want to read this sentence.
Yeah.
They provide opportunities for beautification, improved signage, and safe pedestrian paths. So my question is, do you see those same attributes of all the other
Then I would add
gateways?
3 instead of 2, right? So I would add one at Lambert Mesa Road. I would add one at Colorado and Minnesota, and then I'd add one at Matthews Lane.
So beautification, improved signage, and safe pedestrian paths.
Mhm.
And then
Think about that at Matthews Lane. I know it's a pipe dream, never happened, but we have a huge park out there that a lot of our residents utilize, right? It's in the county limits.
But so mostly you think the other, so there'd be 5.
Mhm.
And then they.
I guess Blackridge too, so you'd actually have 6.
But are you gonna improve signage and safe pedestrian paths at Blackbridge?
Probably
Entryway.
not.
So that's why I think we need to be a little bit mindful of what it means to call it a gateway, according to what's here now.
Well, you know what, you might not wanna do it off 133, but I see people coming from like the Blackbridge Winery on that road. And they get confused when they hit town right there, or on that corner there, and they don't know what way to go. You know, cause you go in the subdivision, or you can go over by the Mormon church, the park. And that might be a place that could have a little signage, and it's in town limits,
I
basically.
mean, that's a really good point, right?
Well, that's all.
That's the intent of a gateway, is to direct
Right.
people on either how to get through town or get to where they're going in town, so.
And safe pedestrian
You'd
paths.
add 4. But I think there's some missing, is what I'm getting.
Or do you want to break it into 2 sections? It's the main ones off of Highway 133 and then alternate gateways as well.
So you've got like a.
Major and minor.
Yeah.
Major
Major and minor
minor.
gateways, that's up to you, that sounds great.
Yeah. I like that.
That's the whole point of having this kind of a meeting, right?
Mhm. And then the minor could be iterated, but
By population centers outside of town and how to get them into town.
Yeah.
safely.
Right, because
But-
major's off a major highway.
and
They
then
have
need
the
to describe the other minors
Gateways for the
In here, I
locals and the
think.
gateways for the burners.
and more stars on the map, big
Right.
stars and little stars.
And then that informs the map that needs to happen
Are
from
you comfortable doing that?
I'm comfortable adding language for gateways and then giving you a map that shows gateways specifically.
Are you comfortable describing the ones being added as minor?
I would like help on Blackbridge,
Okay.
and probably Colorado Ave. I'm pretty familiar with Lambert, Mesa, Matthews. Those are 2 that are also need to be a little more safety conscious.
So it's easy when you come off the highway from Blackbridge, and that's kind of marked as, there's a lot of private property marking, you know, directing people down. You know,
Especially
there's
the
a
winery.
narrow bridge there. You don't want to encourage too much traffic there because that bridge.
Yeah.
But once people maybe cross the railroad track and they can go left or they can go right, you know, that's,
That could be the
Maybe.
minor.
Yeah,
yeah, the minor gateway
That would
might
be-
not be on the highway, but it
Right.
might be in a little bit. And then maybe the more important one is if they do go right and they end up in town, then they kind of don't know where they're going at that point.
I think you're absolutely right about Blackbridge. I didn't realize that it connected to 133.
Yeah,
I had no idea about that.
it's
So that's-
it's a wonderful little road, but that's a one-lane bridge and it's wooden, and they
Now
have
there's
to
a
replace that every now and then. And you
Bridge.
can't, you have, I mean, there's weight limits for trucks and
Is that
stuff.
where the pumpkin patch is at? I haven't been there yet.
Well, I wonder if it'd be better to make it not go all the way to 133 in this
Yeah,
case,
keep it
but
on
do
the
what
side.
you were
Have it
describing.
closer to town.
Have it the
Yeah.
just
minor
direct people to.
as it comes
Yeah.
into town, because we can't do much about up there.
Right.
And
Yeah,
so there'd be 5 minor ones, and you're comfortable putting stars upon theirs,
4 minor.
4 minor?
Matthews Lane, Lambert Mesa, Colorado Ave, or Minnesota Creek, and then Blackridge.
So 4 minor ones, and are you comfortable describing
I think I could, I'm gonna have to go out to Blackbridge, I don't go that way.
And,
You
and-
should.
I know.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, it's a really great way to go. And does they provide opportunity for beautification, improved signage and safe pedestrian paths still apply to all?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Especially in Memphis and Lambert Mesa.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, Lambert Mesa is actually, you know, when you talk about town limits and the railroad tracks right there, it's pretty dangerous.
It is.
Especially with, was it first right there, where you're stopping uphill, a stop sign, so.
And there's a
Especially when you
third,
ride your ditch with your 11-year-old and she likes to dive bomb down that hill.
Oh.
and there's like a resident population of very tame deer there that are crossing back and
Like
forth
Crest Haven?
all the time. Well, yeah, they go
Yeah.
from Crest Haven, they go across the road and they go to the Vidi's place and then they go back across the road. So I'm surprised more don't get hit.
We have a problem, we thought it was dogs, it's actually a deer that gets to a garbage can.
Well,
Thursday
I was walking down that hillside early morning last year and I saw a pig's head right on the,
Oh, my God.
just a black pig's head. I must have fallen off someone's track.
Right, let's not talk about pigs.
Okay.
From Hawaii, is that what you said?
Oh, man. Yeah.
Okay,
So.
major minor
Just
gateways,
that
that's a
it's
really good point there
Yeah.
to identify.
So
that
we're
on the
gonna
map.
change that to major and minor. Good.
Okay, so we said there are 5,
He said 4 minor.
4 minor and 2 major.
And then we need to put the star, and we have, on the map, we have just 1 star for gateway. Should we do a
There's,
big star and a little star?
Yeah.
No, we do the same size star, different countries.
Yeah.
okay, you go, guy.
Oh, very good.
And it'll be a separate map, so it'll be removed from the flume. So when you get a final flume, we'll remove it from the flume, and it'll have its own map for gateways.
Okay.
And the,
It's like, it's getting too busy,
Yeah.
it is
yeah.
busy.
you know,
Yeah,
And then the description, you'll,
I can do that.
Okay.
okay.
I think we did.
I think we kind of went through this whole section. And that land use map, by the way, goes on page 34, future land use map. It's kind of at the end of this little chapter. Okay. I'm still, I know this wasn't on my agenda, but is there any updates on when the contractor is gonna start advertising for things?
I can't do it until the draft is ready for review
Okay,
and the work session has been scheduled.
okay,
I replied to Phoenix Rising Resources, I sent out to all of you your emails. And it says, hey, we're not ready yet, but when we are ready, you know, when the planning commission is ready, you know, we'll have you do that dissemination campaign, get it out.
and then this, I just wanna say, for if anybody's on Zooming or watching on YouTube. So this thing was the survey. We have the results of the survey. It's not in the packet. Is this something just for us to see, or can other people look at it at this point?
I think it needs to be on an agenda at another meeting,
Okay.
but I wanted you to have that information.
So it's kind of work product?
Because there's 290 pages of responses, overwhelmingly in support of the housing element.
Well, that's what we emphasized when we were doing the,
Well, there's some disagrees in there to go through it. So it's interesting.
but this was all about the housing element, right?
Yeah.
The survey.
Average, it's between 60 and 65% in favor of what has been written. There's about 15% that is kind of, that says, I don't care either way, and then the balance is either disagree or strongly disagree.
Okay, and was this made available any other way than on Facebook?
Sure was, so it was also put out at Text My Gov.
Okay,
Yes.
I don't get Text My Gov and I signed
Yeah.
up for it, so why am I not getting Text My Gov?
You might only be set, so when you signed up, you may only have been signed up for a specific thing. If you haven't signed up for all of the information, that's something Ruben can help you with later. And then, but it was also available on the website and paper copies. There've been a couple of people pick up paper
It's on
copies,
the
right?
banner.
So we also have paper copies at town hall. I don't think anybody's returned a paper copy though. So we haven't seen returned paper copies.
Okay,
Do we want to make a motion on the changes?
yeah, do we want to make a motion on the changes? Is anybody comfortable doing that? Should we go one by one, or should we just kind of do we have it written down somewhere clearly enough?
I can write them all down.
Can we see, how are you all feeling about capturing the final wording
Yeah, maybe.
on, let's see. It's urban farm, what was the first one?
Conservation,
Conservation,
urban
urban
farm,
farm.
workforce, ag
I
farm.
can take a stab at it if you want something.
Gateways.
Okay, you've been taking good notes.
And taking notes.
I know, really
I
scribble.
was gonna say, that's. Okay, okay, here we go. I'm gonna make a motion. I'm make a motion I'm gonna make two motions. Maybe more. I'll make a motion. My first motion is to revise the urban farmland section to retitle it as urban farm with the following changes: that as a primary use, it's single family residential with ADUs as appropriate. Supporting uses would be ag and uses that support agriculture, to include farm worker housing, which is defined as housing affixed to a permanent foundation that will cross-reference Econ 16. We will also add to the end of the description wildlife habitat and avoiding flagpole development. And as a supporting use, we will also add parks and trails.
After institution.
Yes, after institutional. Okay, that is what I have for the urban farm section.
I think it was
Did you
wildlife
send-
corridors.
Did you put
versus
flagpole
habitat.
lots in there, Lucy? Okay.
I believe it was.
Are we going with corridor or habitat? Corridor? Okay, please
Corridors.
change habitat to wildlife corridor.
I think that's about what I have.
Cool, do I have a second?
I'll make a second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Second motion is with respect to the conservation neighborhoods, deleting reference to conservation easements and refining the wording just so it reflects removing that piece. I think that was actually all I had for that portion.
That's all I had.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, and then a third motion, it'll just be a catch-all. Adding the definition of farm worker housing in Econ 16 to cross-reference the urban farmland section. And then to the wildlife corridor portion, after a 200-foot buffer, adding as prescribed by the Colorado CPW. Reaching out to the public to get photos to pair with the different land uses as a description. And then adding the 4 minor gateways with descriptions at Matthews, Lambourne, Minnesota, and Blackbridge.
Get all that.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, great. So, just I'm trying to just make sure that we've had.
Can I add something for you guys to consider for another agenda? I would like to propose that you do a workshop when it comes time for maps. So I've been pushing off on doing anything like that. So that way, when we start looking at the maps that are required, it's not just my work, but in real time, I can make changes to a map that you guys can see in real time as we're moving forward. That would be really helpful, I think, instead of just doing something, presenting it, and having to make a change later.
And you're referring to the four that are figures that are to be determined, and there are four figures
Including the gateway map.
and the
Is
gateway
that
map.
something we would like to entertain scheduling now, or is that something we,
Like for the next meeting or something?
do you want to use the next meeting as a workshop, or would you like to schedule a separate workshop?
Can I make another suggestion?
Yes.
So I would say you would do the workshop where you say you have this workshop meeting where we're working on maps, and then in that same meeting, after that meeting, same day, you go into a regularly scheduled where you adopt the changes made those times.
Okay.
Do you want to do housing at that meeting too? Go over the housing element survey results on the 5th of February?
Are we gonna have time to do all that? How long do you think the maps workshop would, what are
That's-
you envisioning there?
That's really up to you.
So what are the maps that we're contemplating here?
So we've added one with gateways, but then
It's,
page
let me,
there's 4 others.
yep, there's 4. Let me see if I can find them.
I think it says, it's in red, it's in your agenda packet, it says
Yeah.
placeholder, my computer doesn't, so.
Yeah. Let's see.
Oh, I remember seeing that. Yeah, it's in red.
Public places and facilities,
It said,
hazard areas,
pages down.
infrastructure, and that.
Is that like area book not defined? Is that, no, that's.
No, there's a page that's set aside, it says figure 3, future land use map 4,
It was also in your comments.
and,
Oh, yeah.
figure 2.
Public
No.
places and
There's
facilities.
4 that are missing.
There's public places and facilities, and that's on page
To
35.
be inserted, but
To
we
be
have another
inserted.
Areas.
And we have infrastructure on
Infrastructure.
39.
And are there only 3 pages?
Oh, I do have the news, our housing needs assessment was accepted by the state. So
Oh.
Yeah.
Let me just do a,
which means we comply even with
I
the
knew
new.
that it came up as.
oh,
page
really?
31.
Oh, good. Okay, here I have them. I only have 3. Figure 4 on page 35. Figure, hang on, I need.
So you've got-
Oh, no, there's something 36.
Yep, that's coming. I just need, on 36, it
It's
is hazard areas, and then on page 39, infrastructure.
And then we're adding
And then a
gateways.
gateway that'll be under the land use
Could be,
So that's 4
or
total?
econ.
could be any of them.
I guess
It could also be
decided.
housing.
We're gonna have to ask.
Suzanne, how early would you be comfortable coming in? Would you be comfortable coming in any earlier than 6 for the work session?
Yeah, if it's, well, I can't do it on Monday, but I think it's hard because I kind of work on call a little bit, but, Tuesday might be okay, a little earlier.
So you wouldn't be able to do it before the next, like the
Not
same day?
on Monday, yeah. Unless I come here from work, and that could be 5:30, but
That wouldn't be enough time for a
Yeah.
work session.
yeah, it's a little tough.
No, could you do it on a Tuesday?
Yeah, Tuesday probably would
Well,
work.
it's housing for.
Well,
Right now, I'm not my work. here
could we
Tuesday.
do it maybe before, so our next meeting is February 3rd, could we do it before that?
On a different
So we
day.
could have an action item on the 3rd to, you know, adopt us, so.
Especially if we're talking about the housing study too, I think to do the workshop, and then have that's a lot.
So the next agenda would be incorporating what we've done in the work session and the housing element, but when that week before, so January 27th through the 31st,
Yeah,
when would you be available for a work
Well,
session?
I might be able to do it on the 28th.
We have the board.
Oh,
board of
that's,
trustees
sorry,
meeting on
okay, so let me see.
21st, there's a tree.
What about the
board.
23rd?
Oh, tree board.
Well, does it have to be early then, if you're doing this a whole separate meeting? I mean,
Well, we have to
Since-
do the maps and then go through.
no, what we're saying is kind of splitting it up, so.
Right, so we'd have the work session a separate day.
Yeah.
This
I
afternoon.
mean,
Now we're gonna.
I can do it either way, like, for me, I'd rather take away from my work day
There
than
it
take away
is.
from my family time,
Yeah.
but I can make either work, but then I'm also considering taking
future.
staff, it would be, I think, better to do that during
And it gets so late.
office hours.
So I'm trying to like I'm trying to, I mean, I don't know what my schedule exactly is gonna be, but yeah.
I don't know if the 21st would work for you, it would just have to be at 6:30 or later, so it didn't interfere with tree work.
Oh, is Martin Luther King Day a holiday?
The 20th, yes, it is.
So I'm not, that
Do me
21st is
that,
gonna
I mean,
be
just mean
killer showstopper. So we could do the 20th.
Because you'd be off.
I'd be off, no, well, yeah, I might have to work a little bit, but I might, I'll be off.
Staff is off on the 20th.
Oh, I forgot. Okay,
Yeah, I'm taking off, sorry.
I don't think there's.
Thing is-
I have a dream, I can't help it.
So I really think, I think that, what are the maps we're looking at? We're looking at infrastructure,
Infrastructure,
Yeah.
hazards,
And do
and
that.
gateways,
I could do like
Here, let me
3,
just
that would
do
give
it.
me enough time.
but there also should be one for existing neighborhoods. Existing neighborhoods.
What about the meeting room and staff time,
Where's
Tuesday
it?
the 20th at 3 P.M.?
he's talking about a map that has not been incorporated into here. I wasn't aware of it because to be
It's a board
external.
day.
It's called
I know, but it's
existing
not scheduled yet, but we'll be having a work session starting at 5 before that meeting.
Yes, yeah.
We'll have a board work session.
Oh, yeah.
Because I didn't know about it, so I didn't make a
So
place.
I'm gonna just have to look at like when
We got
the
two conversations.
wants time off and then, so Monday,
Couldn't that be public places, or public places are more institutional?
Right, that's more institutional.
And did that come from the statute to have existing
I think
neighborhoods?
so. No, it was referencing, oh, it's still a little battery.
Do I need to look up existing neighborhoods to see?
Chair Watson? I mean, are you good doing a work session on a different Monday, just at a normal planning commission meeting time, if you guys are gonna explore that?
yeah,
Mondays are
Lucy
a
was
lot more
thinking it would be.
I was just asking if we could do it during normal business hours. Thinking that it would be easier, rather than having you guys come in more after hours, if we could arrange it during the workday.
I don't think that would be an issue, we just have to make sure it didn't interfere.
It's sunshine just popped through.
It's cool on Tuesdays. Okay, so we would have to worry about court, and then we would have to stay away from Thursday or something?
Have you got anything from Stuart Ditch or Paonia Ditch about?
So,
Reference.
Stewart Ditch is doing it at the library.
Yeah, you guys have that on the agenda coming.
Yeah, we're looking at the reservations.
work schedule gets popped up on the wall the week before and sometimes she does.
PT
Okay.
Thursdays, so.
Okay. Yeah, I don't have a specific schedule in front of me.
Yeah, I don't see
right now.
anything that would necessarily conflict during the workday with me and Ruben being here, we can work stuff around.
So doing it later, is that what we're talking about?
She was talking
During the work.
Oh,
work
during
hours.
work hours.
I come up with existing.
I have to look at other people's schedules for my position is part-time. I only have 2 days scheduled and I know I'm working and then everything else is flexible.
And so the days that you're scheduled.
It just says existing neighborhoods shall, blah, blah, blah. Let me get my computer.
It's actually Monday and Saturday. But the thing is, then it's like, well, someone wants to go to medical for this day, so she's not gonna be here, so you come in there,
So-
I'm not gonna work on Thursday, you know, that
You
kind of
say-
thing.
Can we tentatively, can we just see if everybody's available Wednesday, the 29th? And then you could get back to us if
Yeah,
there's any
that
timing.
might be okay, let me see.
That's good for me.
Is there any conflict with 3 P.M. on Wednesday, the 29th?
Wait a second.
Let me check on my.
Wow.
I won't.
That's a no.
No, that's tentative, we need Suzanne to check with her.
Yeah, it's
schedule
like
and get back to us.
MJ has been telling me, I wanna take all these Wednesdays, she was telling me a day that she wanted off, and Signy likes that Thursday, so. I do have to look at that.
So could we tentatively say it and then you can check in?
Yeah, and then if that doesn't work, what will we
So
do?
you're talking Wednesday, the 29th of January?
Wednesday, the 29th of January at 3 PM tentatively
And
for the planning
Fridays.
commission work session.
Quite often on Fridays, I end up not working. I usually have 2 days a week that I don't go in, and sometimes it's Friday, sometimes it's Sunday, so obviously.
So we
don't wanna
could
be
either
on-
do the 24th.
Is a Friday bad, like if it's earlier?
What
I
are
think
Fridays like?
As long as it's not a packet Friday, we're probably fine,
Oh, and
which the 31st would not be.
Oh,
It is
31st,
not.
okay.
But the 24th would be,
Yes, the 24th would be.
yeah,
So the 31st is a possibility.
29th or the
29th or
31st, so maybe you
31st.
can,
And I think both of those days are clear with staff too, so.
there, I.
I'm fine either way.
Sure.
I think that's something you guys.
Both of those
The
are three.
existing neighborhoods is something you guys.
Both of those are 3, we're just putting in days. I
Is
think we're
what?
talking maybe earlier on Friday.
Yeah,
Oh.
3, what are you saying, 3?
Oh, I don't know, I thought you were saying earlier than that, I can make whatever happen.
Okay, well, 3.
We're just putting placeholders on the reservations calendar so we don't rent it out or something.
And how
These are
long
questions.
would you foresee that taking, that little workshop?
1 to 2 hours?
And,
Probably, I would say 2, because
2
I
hours?
mean, we get into good discussion on detailed levels of maps.
Maps, okay.
What's the neighborhood map? Did you figure that? out?
Yeah,
What
it's
is,
existing neighborhoods.
that was. Where was that in here?
It's something that is mentioned in the housing element
Oh,
that, yeah,
Okay, what's the purpose of
what would
existing
it
neighborhood?
entail?
showing where existing neighborhoods are. So because we do have some planned unit developments that like, you have happened throughout time. One of them being a River Brook Bank property that's changed numerous times and subdivided. I think, is it Creek Vista, is that one?
Creek Vista?
Yeah.
That's also on a planned unit development. It's just good to show what's existing and what those neighborhoods entail, right? So if it's not zoned, but this is like a planned unit development that is known as the Creek Vista neighborhood. This is
Oh, I see
town
what
original.
you're saying. If it has kind of a, like. Yeah,
One, like my neighborhood and most of Third is considered the Haley's addition. So it's like a old town neighborhood.
You know what I found at one time, and I'm trying to find it again, I have no idea where it was in historic ordinances. But the county, there used to be First Street, it was platted all along, under Stewart Ditch there, and they abandoned it. They abandoned part of that and gave the property to the owners on either side, and there was an ordinance, and it said, because the town has said they're not really gonna be developing up here, we'll abandon this road. It would be really interesting to find that. I'm kind of wondering what the old agreements were at one time, or do we look at those things anymore? I mean, it obviously had to do with that steep slope.
Yeah. I don't even know where to begin on that one. I just know that with an existing neighborhoods map, you look at what is actually existing.
Yeah.
If it's been vacated, that's not something I would put in an existing neighborhood map because it's no longer.
Oh, yeah, it would be in the map. I
Yeah.
was just saying in general, it's kind of interesting.
did we decide that on the maps for where all the water sources, that got discussed once, but then you brought up a problem with, the.
It would, that's one of the things in infrastructure. So, I'm not gonna give, I'll give a lot of pushback on our source water protection plan. Like, that is not a document that anybody needs to see. You don't need to know where our ditch boxes are. That's how we protect our water source. But a general area of where we pull our water from,
Where the pipings
not
runs,
necessarily piping,
just.
but where we pull our water from is probably necessary. Our main distribution line from our treatment plant out, yeah, that could go on a map, right? Because it's down in the ground, it's hard to get to, it's not, our springs or our raw water that we're pulling from.
Because that did get discussed, that to have that included as.
Can I just ask about with the infrastructure? I know I do think it's important, but I think there are two head gates that the town uses for its irrigation water, for the town park and for, I don't know if one is up in your neighborhood, but one is up there.
Valley.
And it might be good to just indicate where that runs the park. I mean, just for our own, unless that's a terrorist risk too.
What I would be more concerned about is somebody tampering with like, our diversion box. That's what I'd be concerned about.
Okay, but I mean, it's interesting to know what alley it runs through and goes to, where it travels through town to get to town park. Because that whole system is such a mystery, and I mean, to homeowners who end up on it, but it would be really interesting if the town could like kind of
The
show.
only issue that I
where-
have with ditch water is it's not ours. We buy a share into it, but it's really a completely separate entity. And so if we're gonna put something within one of our maps that shows this is the ditch water for Stewart Ditch,
For the town park.
even then, anything that's not ours, it is a ditch company's, I would be really hesitant to include any map in our comprehensive plan without first conferring with them.
So it's not your water once it leaves the gate?
Once it's at a diversion box, but again, I don't want to show a diversion box in case it gets tampered with.
Just put a lock on it?
Well, it could just be a security risk if somebody wanted.
Homeland security thing.
Drinking water for sure.
It's just.
I understand. It's so funny because I think there was a former administrator that had that point he brought up. And then I go on to the Delta Police Department, they have this very detailed overhead map that you can look online of their campus with labels for all the buildings. And I was like, talk about security risk. The city of Delta doesn't seem to be very concerned. It was kind of interesting. I don't know if they changed it. That
Are you
was
talking
quite a while
for
ago.
their police station?
Yeah, it showed where all their buildings were and it was.
Well, we're gonna do that with our institutions, right? We're gonna show on a map, public institutions, you're gonna show police on the town hall. But I'm not gonna get on a detailed level and show, the evidence locker.
Yeah, I know, okay.
How to access that.
Okay, so we have a potential meeting for the 29th and 31st earlier, like 3 p.m. And I'll see if I can't figure out if there are any days that I absolutely can't, that have been marked out for me at this point, or.
So you'll get back to the town on which.
Yeah, I
one
can
goes.
look at that on Wednesday. And I'm working on Wednesday, so. And I'm working on Jimmy Carter Day. Are you closed on Jimmy Carter Day? Or are you gonna work here in town?
When is that, the 28th?
No, it's Thursday.
We might watch.
It's Jimmy Carter Day. All the federal offices are being ordered to be closed.
Well, we have 2 trustees here, they can't make a decision.
I'm still gonna work on Jimmy Carter Day. I've got it. Amazon doesn't quit. So, okay, great.
I make sure it doesn't.
So,
Yeah, because the orders over.
Yes, I do.
okay, so I'd like to adjourn the meeting.
Okay. I have to vote on that.